Which we developed in partnership with OpenAI. This is the first trading indicator.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer are blasting China's move to curb exports of rare earth minerals, calling that action a threat to the global supply chain. Joining us right now for the latest is Michael Silver, the CEO and chairman of American Elements. That is a private U.S.-based company that distributes advanced materials, including rare earths. And Michael, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Let's talk a little bit about what you do. You're not somebody who's actually mining for these rare earths. You are someone who is a distributor. What has the global supply chain looked like over the last recent months? What's been more difficult?
Well, we're actually manufacturers. One of the sales guys in the company said we have 1 foot in the mine and 1 foot in the cell phone. So we're processing what comes out of the mine to produce the materials that the company can use to make things. And this process actually on the export licenses began on April 4th. They restricted 7 of the rare earth materials. They just added another 5 about a week ago. And it's very different from the past because what they're doing now is restricting just the rare earths. There's a handful of them that are critical to both commercial technology as well as military technology that really account for no more than 1% of a rare earth deposit. The bulk of rare earths, cerium, lanthanum, neodymium, that make up to 90% of the deposit, are unrestricted. So this is kind of unique, and it may reflect a desire to hold on to these materials themselves over the long term. And it's going to create some issues, I think, for the U.S. government. Yes.
I mean, that's on the one hand, it looks like they are doing this because they're trying to put pressure on the Trump administration for tariffs or for restrictions of semiconductor chips. On the other hand, if this stuff is that rare and we had a hold of it, would we be willing to share it either?
Exactly. Well, and their military applications. So you can imagine, Deng Xiaoping said decades ago, the Middle East has oil, we have rare earths. They view it as a national treasure. And the thought of somebody using their rare earths to cause them, defense issues and military issues, you can understand where they're coming from. I appreciate it. But there's a lot of things they can do, and they've done many, many very clever things in the past. And the one that we're concerned about, at least from the U.S. government standpoint, is they reduce the price of cerium and lanthanum and neodymium and praseodymium, which is the bulk of the rare earth deposit, to a very, very low number. And then they maybe even discontinue some of things like dysprosium and terbium, ones that are very rare and are used in military applications. Because the result of that is all these new mines that are trying to be funded right now, you've got some of them listed on your screen, are going to have some real difficulties because they're going to be operating in the negative. Even Mountain Pass, old mine, may find itself in the negative. And that will require U.S. government subsidy to maintain that mine in operation.
That's devious.
Well, it is, but it's the reality of the national defense system. When you've met with the Trump administration, what have you told them?
This came up. This potential issue. We did an advisory letter to it's a confidential letter we do to our customers, where we advise them of this concern. And I think the government has been prepared to be in a position to subsidize the Mountain Pass mine in order to get the terbium, dysprosium, scandium, and yttrium, these ones that are essential for military technology, guidance systems, for lasers, many of the technologies. And they are the rare earths. And China may just decide not to sell them at all in order to maintain their own, military footing.
We had a guest yesterday who said that part of the problem is for the heavy rare earths, we just don't have them geologically in the United States. For the rare earths that you're talking about, do we have deposits of them?
No, those are sometimes they're referred to as the heavies. See, what China has is they have two deposits. They have the bastnasite ore in the north, which is more typical. It's very similar to what we have at Mountain Pass. But then they've got these ionic clays in the south that are loaded up with the heavies, and we don't have those ionic clays. So they're in a very, very good position on the heavies. However, Mountain Pass produces heavies. Mount Weld, which is Linus's mine in Australia, produces some heavies. And if you just apply those to military applications, which I think what the government's going to eventually do, there's sufficient volume in the United States to support a military application. But again, what could happen is that Syrian land and the Neodymium could go down a very low number, and Mountain Pass won't be able to operate profitably. And the new mines that are everyone's trying to fund right now, they will definitely not be able to open profitably if they do this.
So I'm just trying to figure out what this means. If you think that there is enough there for our defense capabilities, what other applications are going to get shut out? What companies are going to get shut out? What's the fallout?
Well, it's going to have an impact on electric cars because there's dysprosium in the neodymium iron boron magnet, which is it's critical to electric cars. Laser technology. There's going to be quite a lot of commercial technology that's going to be burdened by this.
Meaning that EV growth is going to be even harder than we already are learning?
Correct. It depends. Again, this is...
Hey traders, welcome back to the Trading View channel. In this video, we're introducing our new AI indicator, which we've developed in partnership with OpenAI.
It depends. Again, this is just something you try to project what could happen. And China's done some very, very clever, I won't go to all the historical things since 2008. They've done some extremely clever things with pricing. Occasionally they raise them up because they want something to happen. Sometimes they drop them next to nothing. There was one time what they did was they made them extremely low in China and higher outside of China in order to encourage companies like General Electric to move their plants to China. And that was with the WTO action in 2012 that they lost because they had this price differential and the WTO said, you can't do that. So they've used a lot of methods, and you got to anticipate creativity on their part.
Wasn't it that they were dumping rare earth metals back in 2002 that caused the Mountain Pass mine to shut down to begin with?
Well, dumping, they just drop the prices. They don't have to dump.
Right.
They have
That's what I mean. They're dropping prices so much that it no longer makes it commercially viable. In a capitalist
when you
system.
have 15% of a deposit in your boundary, because that's just the way plate tectonics happen to work out for you, you have control of the pricing on that material. If your prices go to the moon, everyone's going to follow, right? Shareholders would have an uproar if they didn't follow. If they go down below your cost structure, you got to find a way to get there. So
does this entire industry need to be nationalized? Your shop included?
I would say, like I said, we've got some deposits in Wyoming that should be mined. They're excellent deposits. We have Alaska, a UCorp site. Who knows where Greenland's going to go? I think those have to be treated as national priorities, and there will be government involvement, some government subsidies. In essence, Mountain Pass has been nationalized because the U.S. government now owns a majority share in it. So I think there's a trend towards sovereign control over these materials, but I don't know if the mines will actually be that.
Okay. Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell, and we are live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and doing a simulcast on X Spaces. Please subscribe to all my channels. I have 5 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. You can follow me on X and on GETTR. You can also be a subscriber to my Substack and my Patreon channel. You can also follow me on TikTok. So there's many modalities to follow my work. Please subscribe, share the links, ask your social media to follow me. I greatly appreciate it. All these videos are for free, and I give you my perspective on the news and how to navigate through the tumultuous markets and tell you how to improve your health and wellness. Today, the market is trading right now at 6,699. There's a little bit of a resistance level in the intraday trading at 6,700 for the S&P 500. I still have a year-end target of 6,800 to 7,000 for the S&P 500. The support level is at 6,500. The near resistance level is at about 6,800. But intraday, we have a resistance level of 6,700. So VIX is still a little bit elevated. It's at 20.63, and the Japanese yen is trading at 150.82. As long as the yen doesn't get close to 145, you're okay. And I suspect that if there's no negative news about tariffs between the United States and China, the VIX should start to go down, and we should continue a melt up with the S&P 500. The euro is trading at 1.16. Oil is trading at 58.31. It was trading between a range of 60 to about 65, and now it's trading below the 60 range. So near term, 60 is a resistance level and a support level at about 57, 56. It can't stay there for very long because eventually the oil producers will shut the well, and then inventories will start to decline and the price will go up. So this is probably a good time to buy. Natural gas is trading at 3.036. It should be trading at about 3.2. Part of the reason is that there's an oversupply, and it's tied to the suppression in energy in the futures market because the oil is below 60. So natural gas should, in the end of Q4 and the beginning of Q1, should be trading at around 3.4, 3.5. But again, it is all predicated on the news about tariffs. So that, you gotta watch that pretty closely. Bitcoin is suppressed. It's at 111,000. BITO is at 18.26. I think there's a lot of market manipulation with Bitcoin. You know, it's very capricious, and it's not something that is that trades in a normal fashion. Right? I think there's a lot of market manipulation. That's my take on it. So right now, I would do a little bit of dollar cost averaging into the S&P 500 because of the tariff news that came out last Friday. And we should see the S&P 500 get to about 6,800 to 7,000. Once it gets to those points at year end, then we need to reevaluate and take a look at the price structure and understand the potentiality of an AI bubble. I don't think it'll burst this year, but it might burst next year. So we have to pay attention to that. Well, thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. If you take a look at the great products that I offer on my store, you'll be able to stack them in a certain way to help slow down the aging process, and you'll be weathering the storm of the fall and the winter. You're going to be able to boost up that immune system. It's really important. Now, I have a lot of great products that will help to do this. So let's start with what you need to prepare for the fall and the winter. That's the first statement of this. Please go to my store and get the structural nanosilver toothpaste. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, help reduce inflammation at the gum line, and help the health of your gum line. This will also help to neutralize. Why? Because it has structural nanosilver. This is very important to take, especially in the fall and the winter. You should be using this year round, but definitely in the fall and the winter, because it's going to help to neutralize. In addition, this has no fluoride. So please go to my store and get a few tubes of the very high quality toothpaste. Also, get the first pillar of my anti-aging protocol. That is the Max 35 or the Cleanse. Cleanse is 30 parts per million. Max 35 is 35 parts per million. They're at different price points. Take either one. Take a teaspoon a day, swish in your mouth, gargle 20 or 30 seconds, and swallow. What this will do is improve the health of your oral cavity, your oral pharynx, which is in the back of your throat, and maintain a mucosal barrier and help with the health and maintenance of your epithelial cells. That's really important because what's coming in the fall and the winter attaches to the epithelial cells. So what you want to do is keep those healthy, and you want to neutralize and you want to maintain that mucosal barrier. Super important. You can take this year round. I've been taking this protocol for over 5 years, every day. Teaspoon a day. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, what you should do is take a tablespoon or 2 a day and then go back to your maintenance dose once everything's all clear. But take it every day, and what this will do is boost up your immune system. So please go to my store, get the Max 35 or the Cleanse, get the toothpaste, use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, and you get $5 off any order. Another great supplement stack to take is the magnesium and zinc. You should be taking magnesium and zinc every day. But if you're not feeling well, take a double dose. Take one in the morning, take one in the evening. Magnesium and zinc will boost up that immune system. It'll also help with brain function. Magnesium increases the efficacy of vitamin D3. So there's 3 benefits to taking the magnesium and zinc. Vitamin C and magnesium will help with your skin, boost up your immune system, help with brain function, and increase the efficacy of vitamin D3. Stack these together. You should be taking these every day to slow down the aging process and to boost up that immune system and your brain function. But especially take it this fall and winter. It's super important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Again, use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. All right, I want to play some of the Supreme Court hearing of the Voter Rights Act.
Endpoint, and what exactly do you think the endpoint should be, or how do we know for the intentional use of race to create districts?
Now, this ruling has the potential to undermine, if not completely overturn, a core provision of the Voting Rights Act intended to ensure Black voters have adequate representation. I'm joined by a terrific group of reporters right now, and David Chalian. I'm going to start with you, and I am going to start by showing our viewers the maps that we're talking about to Louisiana specific. There is the GOP drawn map, which has one majority Black district out of this.
All right, I'm only a minute in to this video. Okay, just a minute in. Let's rewind it again. Let's rewind it. Let's just replay it. Listen very carefully.
We do start at the Supreme Court and a monumental case that could transform federal elections for decades to come. Arguments are about to wrap up in the case over Louisiana's congressional map and whether The state can draw that map in such a way to ensure that minority voters are fairly represented. The two likely swing votes, Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh, appeared likely, just in the way they were talking and asking questions, to ban states from considering race when drawing.
Now, think about what the word she's using, ban. Now, think about how they demonize the executive branch under Trump, saying that when he uses his authority, it's authoritarian, but it's constitutional. All right. If it's not constitutional, he gets sued and then he has to backtrack. All right. But when he's doing something and it's heard by the court and the court agrees, it's constitutional. That's how our system works. All right. So it's automatically assumed that when Trump does something, until it's litigated in court, it must be bad. All right. Now, Congress or certain states may have issued a law that may actually be unconstitutional. So if the legislative branch does something that is unconstitutional and it goes to the Supreme Court, they can state, you know what? Congress is wrong. You can't pass the bill. It's illegal. All right? So because it's dealing with voters, all right, and opinions, right, not the law of the land under the Constitution, she'll use words like undermine, that the Supreme Court's undermining the Voters' Right Act. Really? Their job on the Supreme Court is to state, is that law constitutional or not? That's all they got to do. That's their job. And if the mosaic of the votes state that it's unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional. That's how our system works. So she'll say, oh, Trump bad, and the Supreme Court will say that he can't do something or not, or he can, and they'll demonize Trump. Why doesn't she do the same thing with the legislative branch with the Voter Rights Act? Why doesn't she do the same thing? Oh, it's orange man bad, and if you do something for the masses, it must be good, even though it may be unconstitutional. That's her logic. That's her logic. So if they overturn the Voters' Right Act, they're undermining the Voters' Right Act. Well, no. The Voters' Right Act was always, as being implemented, illegal. All right, let's continue. But here is a classic example where if the media doesn't like what they're getting, they'll take that branch of government and demonize it. And in this case, it's the Supreme Court. In most cases, it's just the executive branch because Trump's in charge. I mean, Dana Bash is one of the most disingenuous reporters on CNN. Now, Jake Tapper is probably worse.
Listen to Justice Kavanaugh in a key moment. He was questioning whether the country still needs that provision of the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
The issue, as you know, is that this court's cases in a variety of contexts have said that race-based remedies are permissible for a period of time, sometimes for a long period of time, decades in some cases, but that they should not be indefinite and should have an endpoint. And what exactly do you think the endpoint should be, or how do we know for the intentional use of race to create districts?
Now, this ruling has the potential to undermine, if not completely overturn, a core provision.
Undermine or completely overturn because it's the conservatives at fault. See the CNN? It's just great. All right, let's continue.
Intended to ensure Black voters have adequate representation.
I'm joined by a terrific group of reporters right now, and David Callahan. I'm going to start with you, and I am going to start by showing our viewers the maps that we're talking about to Louisiana specific. There is the GOP drawn map, which has one majority Black district out of the 6 districts. It combines Baton Rouge and New Orleans into one, and that means that Shreveport, it would be a Republican seat. The current map is what you see on the right. There are 2 majority Black districts out of 6. And what you also need to know is approximately 1/3 of the population of the state of Louisiana is Black. So I want to talk about this, but also, as you do so well, why it matters for the entire country.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can stress the importance of this case enough. And I know there's always danger in reading the tea leaves of oral argument and where a decision will be here. But given that this has been a sort of a John Roberts hobby horse over the years, I think it's pretty safe to imagine where the court may end up here, which is sort of gutting these the portion of the Voting Rights Act that would impact this kind of congressional district drawing. You could, it is not.
It's bottom line. How can you do districting based on race? That's the whole point here. The whole point. How can you do a district based on race? It's illegal. You can't do that. Oh, there's misrepresentation because of some sort of, white privilege and blah, 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 blah.
That Republicans may be able, is in the South where this has been applied, maybe gain 12 seats out of this whole redistricting
Well, on that
process.
note, we have from the sources, the Fair Fight Action Black.
So what they've been doing, the Democratic Party, you got to remember, the Democratic Party only has about 500 counties in the United States. Over 3,000 are Republican. 500 Democrat, over 3,000 Republican. What the Democrats have is that they've in the blue states, they've created these districts that give them a stronghold, especially in high density areas. Now, I said a long time ago that a big reason why there was illegal immigration and that there were sanctuary cities in these blue states is because these blue states are hemorrhaging population. And they need to bring illegal immigrants in to be able to get funds for education, to get federal funding for programs, and to eventually give amnesty so they maintain representation in Congress, because it's based on population. These states are losing citizens. So they have to play games with the census, with illegal immigration, and an amnesty, and blah, 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 blah. All right? So here, we're seeing that this whole construct that they've had to try to maintain power, even though they don't even come close to the number of counties that the Republicans have, that when this Voters' Right Act, if it gets struck down by the court, is going to show to the American public that this country really is Republican and not Democrat. And then we've been viewing this in the wrong terms. The Democrats don't even come close to the number of counties that are Republican. They don't even come close to it. 500 to 3,000.
Think that Democrats could lose up to 19 seats.
Yeah, I mean, there are projections that are that high. So what you're talking about is,
And if that does happen,
next year,
and if that does happen, then this pendulum that's swinging away from the liberals to the conservatives will increase. This country will be a country of God, country, and family. And there's going to be a new conservatism that will take place in this country.
This ruling comes down from the court, because if it comes in June, primary season will have already begun. The idea of changing for 2026 will be done. But for generations thereafter, I mean, this could be a permanent advantage for Republicans in building an enduring majority in the House of Representatives.
Right. I mean, there's so many critical angles
No,
to this.
the permanent advantage for the Republican Party is called capitalism. The permanent advantage that the Republican Party has is called logic. The permanent advantage of the Republican Party is this affinity to God, country, and family. Now, in the marketplace of ideas, do you think the liberal has a better wear that people want to buy, or the Republican Party? Do you want extreme socialism, or do you want to be free? Do you want collectivism, or do you want to have individualism? Do you want the tyranny of the state, or do you want to be pursuing life, liberty, and happiness?
The way that the House of Representatives would look would be different in terms of numbers, but also the way it would look in terms of race and representation would be very, very different. And Tia, David mentioned Chief Justice Roberts. If you go back to 2007, and one of the opinions that he wrote, he said, the way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating based on race. I mean, that is a
Ninja One is a unified IT operations platform that combines endpoint management, patching, ticketing, backup, remote.
based on race. I mean, that is a lovely thought.
Mm-hmm.
And the question before the court is whether the United States of America is there right now.
And my question is the court, how do you find evidence that states, and of course this is going to have a trickle down effect all the way down to local governments, but there's repeatedly evidence that race, Black voters are being disenfranchised. They're not getting equal representation. So even at that Louisiana map, when you're talking about a state where
I don't know what the fuck she's talking about. Because think about Detroit. Detroit has been run by more Black mayors than white mayors, especially since the 1960s. New York currently has a Black mayor. What is she talking about? That there's not equal See, it's not about equal This is where she's missing the point here. Blacks are only 16% of the population. Now, in some areas, locally, you may have a higher population. Some states or some cities may be as high as 33% or 35%. There's more Blacks in New York than there are compared to the actual average in the United States. 16 to about 33 or 35. Certain states may have some higher levels of Blacks. But that doesn't mean that all 33% of the Black population has the wherewithal to be a leader. Why do you assume that they do? There may actually be better candidates that are coming from a different race. Now, but there's Black senators and Black congressmen already. So this idea that they're not getting represented is not true. Now, they want equal representation. What do they mean equal? Equal in terms of number of representatives that are white in Congress versus the number of representatives that are Black? Well, your population doesn't even come close to the Caucasian population. So statistically, it won't happen. But the thing is that not all of the population, white or black, has the skill sets to be a leader, to be a representative, either at the state level or even at the federal level. So it may take some more time for the blacks to have the skill sets and the connections, the business connections, to be able to climb the ladder. It shouldn't be given to them. And they can run in a Democrat. Here's the thing: is they can run in a Democrat primary, and if the Democrats don't want to vote them in, is it because of their race, or is it because of their policy, or their personality, or they don't have the connections, or whatever? It's a multifactorial problem. Politics is a complex game. It's not so simple as, as just, you could have the best idea, and if you have the bad personality, no one wants you. You could have a great personality, but a bad idea, and no one wants you. So if they don't have any good ideas, no one's going to vote them in. It's about merit. It's about the idea. It's not about the color of the skin. It's about the skill set. Even her argument isn't rational.
But that is not reflected in a lot of these governing bodies, particularly in Congress, until they were mandated to draw that second majority black district. So how do you now argue, well, we think if left on their devices, the legislators in Louisiana are going to do the right thing? There's just not evidence of that. So
what is the right? We have to define what is the right thing. The right thing is to make sure that blacks are in government. Is that the right thing? Or why don't we have the right idea coming from a candidate to be representing their constituency? How's that a better idea? No matter what their color is or gender. Isn't that better? What's doing the right thing mean? This is the same issue with the DEI with colleges. This is DEI for Congress. This is DEI for Congress. They don't have the skill sets to get to Congress, so we got to play with the numbers to try to allow them to get in. All right? Does that mean that you get better representatives? No. No. It's the same issue. This is DEI for Congress.
Say we're past that. We're past the Jim Crow era. We're past the era of just drawing maps just to disenfranchise black people. But there is evidence. Black Voters Matter, they put out a really good primer on this case. And they talked about that there are, Republican operatives that were helping draw maps in multiple states that talked about using race as a factor in how they drew lines in certain states. So
Republicans want a map that will benefit the Republicans. The Democrats want a map that's drawn to benefit the Democrats. If blacks want to be represented and you're in a red state, don't you think maybe you should be Republican? Maybe you'll get better representation in Congress. Maybe the idea of a socialist is just bad. Maybe collectivism is bad. Maybe not having an affinity to God, country, and family is bad. Maybe aborting over 65 million fetuses since the 1970s is bad. Maybe not pulling up your pants, brushing your teeth, and making your bed, and going to school and learning something. If you don't do all those things, that's bad.
the evidence I know that there are a lot of people who want it to be, want it to be a certain way, but the evidence is not that the U.S. has got there.
Phil, just to kind of put this in the historical context that it should be put, 1965, the year of the Voting Rights Act, there were 6 Black members of the House of Representatives, 0 from the South. Now, there are 59, 27 from the South. And before I bring you in on that note, I just want to listen.
But this data is there's confounding variables in here. Just because of the Voter Rights Act, that doesn't mean that Black members in the House increased because of the Voter Rights Act. Between 1965 and 2025, more Blacks went to college. More Blacks started getting educated. More Blacks started getting plugged into a merit economy. Technology, new businesses, understanding some of the inequalities of the educational system and trying to fix it. Those are all major variables that would have increased the Black representation in the House. So why do we assume that the Voter Rights Act was the reason for Blacks being represented in Congress? Because I'd like to see actually every 5 years what the change was. From 1970 to 75, from 1975 to 1980, right? And I'm sure that it was gradually going upward. But also compare it to some of these other variables, like how many of these Blacks were the Black population being educated in secondary school, secondary education, higher education, or compare it to what kind of careers that they went into. So is the Voters' Right bill helpful for Blacks since the 1960s? Yeah, but there were other variables too that helped Blacks, that were part more of a merit economy, a merit society. So there's confounding variables here. They need to tease it out. And what you'll probably notice is that when you graph all these different variables to number of Blacks being represented in Congress, you'll notice that there is a strong correlation to some other factors, like education.
A little bit more of what happened in the Supreme Court this morning, which again, these arguments are still going on as we speak. Elena Kagan asked a representative who was arguing for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund what the impact would be to eliminate the Voting Rights Act provision that they're talking about.
I think the results would be pretty catastrophic. If we take Louisiana as one example, every congressional member who is Black was elected from a VRA opportunity district. We only have the diversity that we see across the South, for example, because of litigation that forced the creation of opportunity districts under the Voting Rights Act. Bill.
I think
Apartments.com helped me find a place I never want to leave. And neither do my friends. Find your place on Apartments.com.
Why did no one tell New York drivers about this new rule? If you are currently insured, drive less than 50 miles a day, and live in a qualified...
I think first to start with that point, you talk to Democrats who have been working with members of the Congressional Black Caucus. There is a palpable fear that the CBC, which is an extraordinarily powerful and I think historically very relevant group of members in Congress, not just the Democratic caucus, the House writ large, that could be taken down by as much as a third if this ends up going in the direction that Brett Kavanaugh seems to hint that it's going. It's significant, it's transformative.
So let me get this straight. So it's really not based on merit. It's really not based on ideas. It's based on drawing up a certain map to get a certain outcome. That's what they're basically saying. It's the same thing that these elite schools are saying, that, you know what, Black students don't do very well on assessment tests. So the standards go down. And eventually, when you have this happen, the elite institutions don't have the same education in its student body because of this issue of lowering the standards. So the assessment tests, they don't perform as well. That doesn't mean that all blacks are like that. Some blacks perform even better than the average white. But in the aggregate, the average black doesn't perform as well, just like the average white doesn't perform as well as an Asian on an assessment test. Now, that doesn't mean the Asian's smarter. That doesn't mean the black is dumber. It just means that they didn't do as well for the assessment, and therefore they don't get in. Oh, reduce the qualifications to get in so these individuals can have opportunity at these elite institutions. So they played this game with the DEI and affirmative action and race criteria. And what has happened over the years is that the student body is actually less educated. So are we really getting good representation in Congress? Because you got to remember, when you send a congressman or woman, black or white, they are representing their constituents, but they're also representing the whole country. Because they're looking at this, what's happening in their district, and the things that they're voting on may affect the whole country. So it's not just their district. Now, maybe they're just not smart enough to be a leader. Not all people can be leaders. Do you think Socrates would have been a great leader? Probably not. Was he an intelligent individual? Yeah. Probably a lot more intelligent than you are. All right? So the thing is that certain people may not necessarily be the best leader. So you shouldn't be creating a map to engineer an outcome and to think that once they're there in Congress that you're going to have a better result. You may actually have a worse result. And this may be the main reason why we are seeing, since from 1965 to 2025, we may be hitting on a pressure point here on part of the reason why government is becoming dysfunctional. I don't think it's the only reason. There's many other different variables, but I think one of the reasons here is that we are electing individuals into Congress that are actually incompetent.
It's like the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, but it's also not happening in isolation. I mean that in two kind of critical areas. One, the kind of progression driven by the conservative legal movement of a project that has been years long, and they have been very, very forceful in their efforts to get to this point, to whittle away at this specific section of the Voting Rights Act over the course of several court cases over the course of several years. This would be kind of the...
It should be based on merit. It should be based on merit and your ideas. Why can't a black person in a district get up on stage and say, these are the ideas that I would like to promote in Congress to help the citizens of whatever district or whatever state? Why can't they do that? No, they need it special. They need a special district. They need a special district. So what's really happening here is that it's not the Democratic Party really caring about the black. They never have cared about the black. You got to remember, slavery came from the Democrats. Secondly, they see this as a loss of power. The Democrats are seeing this, oh, wait a minute. This is a shift of power to the Republicans, and we need to demonize it because it may disenfranchise the black, even though they don't really care about the black. If they cared about the black so much, then why haven't they fixed the plight of the Black community. Because they haven't. They don't care. And the sad thing is that Blacks have been hoodwinked to believe that the Democratic Party actually cares about them.
The ultimate culmination of that effort, but it's been an effort that has been ongoing, and obviously the conservative legal movement is more powerful and more of a central role, obviously, with the 63 majority in the court than they've ever been. The other is kind of the cultural moment, the political moment that we're in at large, where the pendulum has swung dramatically away from diversity, equity, inclusion issues, race issues in general. In terms of the Trump campaign, Republicans, I think culturally kind of mainstream, that has been the case. And it's all happening while President Trump is in the midst of a redistricting effort that is more overtly political and aggressively attempting to block Democrats than I think we've ever seen that's so public before.
The Greek philosophers warned us where the United States is at right now. This ultra-liberalization, where the masses aren't that bright. The masses are doing things that are losing virtue, what I call the God, country, and family affinity. If you lose those virtues, you don't have a strong society. So the only way to get back to it is to have the pendulum swing to conservatism. Now, it's not conservatism, pre-civil rights. This country is the United States has today has the most mixed group of people ever on the planet. There are more opportunities no matter who you are, no matter what race or gender. There are so many opportunities now. Now you add in AI and the internet, you can learn anything for free. Anything. You pick the subject. Pick any subject that you want. And you just do a simple Google search, and you can use social media platforms, or you can use free courses that are available from universities. Anything that you want to learn, you can learn from a blogger, from a podcast, or even through online free courses. There's nothing you can't learn. Aeronautics, engineering, coding, philosophy, history, finance, accounting, anything you want. So if there is something in the Black community where they're getting on the soapbox and saying there's systemic racism and they're being held back by some sort of patriarchal colonialism or something, really? Yet they'll go to a very expensive store and buy $300 jeans, $400 sneakers, and walk around like they're Snoop Doggy Dogg, instead of going to the library and learning something. And the teachers in these inner city schools, they're saying that the behavior is terrible. They don't respect their elders. The students don't respect the elders. The students don't respect fellow students. They don't respect the teacher. And it becomes a babysitting lesson. And these are kids that are in high school. You have teachers that want to teach algebra or American Lit, and they can't because they got to babysit a 16 or 17-year-old that can't behave. That's the problem that we have in America, in these cities. So this bullshit that they keep on propagating in the mainstream media, that there's this systemic racism. No, it was there in a certain epoch in American history, absolutely, but it ain't here now. You had affirmative action. You had lots of people moving up the ladder that actually became productive citizens, became individuals that knew how to behave. And you also got to think generationally. You think an immigrant that comes to the United States legally, right? Think an immigrant that comes to the United States legally is expecting that they're going to turn into a billionaire like next week or the week after or even in their lifetime? You got to think generationally. You got to think that, okay, you work hard, you get your kids into school. All right, those kids are well behaved, they have ethics, they have the God, country, and family affinity. They try to do good within their community and raise children and move up the ladder. And when you're looking at things in a generational way, then that's how you rise up. But if you think like Snoop Doggy Dogg, you think that everything is, purchase now, pay later. Everything's on credit. Everything is immediate. You're never going to rise up. You'll always be a slave. Always. And slavery isn't based on being black or white today. Slavery is based on being in debt. People that are in debt are enslaved. But they want to be a Snoop Doggy Dogg. They want to be a rapper and then complain that they don't get equal representation in Congress. Well, why do you need equal representation in Congress? You're only 16% of the population of the United States.
And this is all happening at the same time as this case is playing out. And I think it underscores the stakes here for a decision that seems likely.
And this is, to your point, Catherine, this is a court that was put in place to meet the cultural shift that Donald Trump has been pushing in because he got the opportunity to put 3 people on the court in the first term.
That's absolutely right. This is Donald Trump's Supreme Court in a lot of ways. He wanted a more conservative court.
So it must be Donald Trump that's moving that pendulum. Maybe it was the ideas of the ultra-liberal that pissed off so many people that conservatism is coming back. This country is turning more conservative, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Now, you got to be careful, though, because a lot of conservatives do have an affinity to religion. And people need to be wise and not have hubris. You got to remember, in the Constitution, there's freedom for religion and from religion. And this is the problem that I had with Charlie Kirk. He proselytized too much, all right? There's no one religion that is superior to another. Judaism isn't superior to Christianity. Christianity isn't superior to Judaism. And Judaism and Christianity is not superior to Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism. No religion is more superior than the other. They all have their benefits and they all have their drawbacks, and is based on certain cultural criteria. And this is the reason why our founding fathers were so wise. They realized you need to have freedom of religion, but also from religion. All right? There's an implicit understanding of the First Amendment, and that implicitness is freedom from religion. So what will happen as this pendulum over the decades moves more towards conservatism, and there will be a small section of the society that will become ultra-conservative. Just like you have ultra-liberal, you'll have these ultra-conservatives that are really pushing their own agenda. They're pushing their own religiosity, and not realizing that them pushing their own religiosity is eroding the Constitution. This is why I keep on saying the Constitution is more important than anybody. The Constitution is more important than your life, more important than your kids, more important than the President of the United States, more important than Kavanaugh, more important than CNN, more important than anything. Why? It's really simple. Because that document guarantees rights and liberty and the pursuit of happiness for future generations. Because when you're dead and gone, no one's gonna fucking care. The Constitution's not gonna care. It's the zeitgeist of the moment. And that's why we, to perpetuate, we need to hold true to the ideals of the Constitution. The body, in a way, is kind of like, let me give you an example. Our DNA is like our Constitution, all right? And it morphs a little bit, and you know, it mutates, and it evolves over time, right? To adapt to a new environment. And there's new laws that are on the books and taken off the books, and there's, you know, the legislative process wax and wanes, right? The DNA of the Constitution is similar to the DNA of the human being, all right? And it doesn't care. The DNA doesn't care about the body. All it cares about is propagating itself into the future. The code is more important than the body. Just like the human, the citizen, is less important to the Constitution. The Constitution's need to continue on into the future is far more important than the citizen. Just like the body is going to perish, but the code of a family continues on. All right. So what's more important, your kids or the code in your kids? It's the code in your kids, not your kids. It's the same thing with the Constitution. Now, people would, you know, if you're an egoist, you would disagree with me, but that's nature. That's Mother Nature. That's the law of the jungle. It's about the code. The code needs to keep on moving forward. That's the drive. Now, if you look at ultra liberals, they're all about nihilism. They're all about, you know, stopping kids, stop having kids, stop procreating. We got to save the planet. We gotta lower our carbon footprint. They want to kill the human race. They want to kill the code. The ultra liberals are like code killers. But you think about conservatives. What do we think? You're thinking like you're a sheepdog, right? And you're trying to protect the herd and the future generations. You don't see that in ultra liberals. Ultra liberals are very self-centered, very self-centered. And I have seen that there is a change in the zeitgeist within the Harvard community, the alumni. There's a change. There are a lot of liberals, but it's peppered with some conservatives, and the conservatives are starting to uncloak and starting to become vocal. And so what you have is that to save the country, you have to have these conservatives start pushing back rhetorically and say, you know what? Liberal philosophy, postmodernism, this idea of self-centeredness from the baby boom generation is not going to sustain us for the next 250 years. And that we need to come back to a time where we have virtue. Now, what the blacks interpret that as is, well, this is unraveling civil rights, and then they're going to take rights away from citizens. No, that's not the case. But it is about merit. It is about getting on the field and doing your best for your country, for your family, and not expecting a handout.
Putting these justices in, and has been very vocal about what he has seen the court do since this court has come into place. And it's right that this happens also as he is very aggressively and openly trying to get states to redistrict ahead of the midterms. Our reporting shows that he's very fixated on the midterm elections because he knows what happens when you lose a midterm, and he doesn't want the investigations, the potential impeachments, the things like that that could happen to him if Democrats take back control of the House. So he is really looking for any way to try and influence the midterm elections, and one of that is that he's been pushing Republican-led states very hard to try and lead all the districts to try and get more Republican seats.
We're going to talk more about that. We actually have the only Democrat in Kansas coming on this program to talk exactly about the move that her state is making to eliminate her seat.
Our lighting lives up to the space you design.
All right.
You designed this.
All right, we're gonna now play. I think we're gonna maybe play something on China or Mamdani. Not sure yet. But please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get these structural nano silver soaps. I have the very high quality. I have 4 different ones. You can get it in charcoal tea tree, lemongrass, in peppermint, and also in lavender. Very high quality structural nano silver soaps. You should use them every day. These are soaps that I use on a daily basis. But also make sure you have them for the fall and the winter. Why? Because it has structural nano silver, and you're going to need that for the fall and the winter. Digestive enzyme complex. Very important to help with the health of your pancreas. It helps to digest. It'll help to break up proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. Help with that digestion. It also has bromelain to help with breaking up clots, and the proteolytic enzymes that are in here will break up glycoproteins. Really important for the fall and winter. Resveratrol will help with youthful gene expression, soak up free radicals, and help with the health of your mitochondria. Resveratrol is really good in helping with the basal layer of your skin. This is part of the reason why that people take resveratrol to look young. It stacks well with C60, NAD+, and ubiquinol. You get the max benefits from resveratrol when you stack it. Now, you should be taking this every day. I've been taking it for many decades. Olive leaf extract. This is dual purpose. This will help with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. It brings down inflammation and it helps with your lipid profile. And when you do that, you're reducing plaque formation. Another great supplement to help with cardiovascular health is omega-3. Again, bringing down inflammation and controlling your lipid profile. When you do that, you have less LDL that's oxidized, and less oxidized LDL means less plaque. This is super important. Plus, when you bring down systemic inflammation, you're also helping with your immune system. And omega-3 reduces the over-stickiness of your red blood cells. And I'm really sure that people are going to have clotting issues during the fall and winter. Why? It's called the S1 and S2 subunit. Myotrol. Myotrol will help to build muscle. Once you turn age 40, you have a different type of gene expression. Your epigenetics change. And you can't build muscle as easily as when you were younger. Well, Myotrol helps with building muscle and maintaining muscle. Do some resistance training and take the Myotrol. It has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to actually help with the gene expression to build muscle. So please go to my store and get the Myotrol. Stack this. Stack it with the digestive enzyme complex to help with the health of your pancreas. Myotrol to help with your muscles. Olive leaf extract to help with your cardiovascular health and your immune system. Resveratrol for youthful gene expression, because you don't want to be a stupid liberal. And omega-3 helps with your cardiovascular health. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements I have, and use discount 5, all caps. Discount number 5, you get $5 off.
U.S.-China trade relations tensions are flaring up again after China imposed even tighter export controls on rare earth minerals. the Trump administration, saying it will set price floors across a range of industries to combat market manipulation by China. Last week, the president announced an additional 100% tariff on Chinese goods by November 1st, and he is threatening to block Chinese cooking oil imports after Beijing halted purchases of American soybeans. The president posted he is considering terminating business with China. Joining me now is U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer. Great to see you, Jameson. Thank you so much for being here. I know that the president is expected to meet Xi Jinping later this month at the APEC summit on October 31st, right before that November 1st deadline. Are we prepared to decouple from China today?
It doesn't have to be that way, Maria. It sounds like the direction China is going, they're the ones that are taking actions to look like they want to decouple from the rest of the world. They're trying to control the supply chains of the entire world, not just the United States. There's obviously a lot of room to have a trading relationship with China that finds a way to be constructive between us. But if China keeps taking the types of actions, or if they actually implement what they threaten to implement, they, in effect, will be decoupling.
Well, it's interesting because they're taking this hard stance at a time that there are plenty of questions about the Chinese economy. How would you assess the Chinese economy today?
Well, their youth unemployment is quite high. It's over 20%. Wow. For growth, they've outlasted the possibility of having real estate growth or infrastructure growth. So they're really focused on just exporting, and they have enormous amounts of overcapacity in manufacturing. They can't flood the U.S. market anymore because President Trump has put tariffs in place. And so they're starting to find other markets to push their things. So their economy has some structural challenges.
Structural challenges, but is... Structural challenges, but is it growing the way that they say it's growing, 4 and 5%?
Well, I'm always skeptical of economic data coming out of China. Over the past several years, they've tightened down on the types of statistics they'll even issue. So I don't really take those at full face value. I think the reality is they're having significant challenges in the Chinese economy. And listen, President Trump has said he wants China to do well. He wants America to do well. This is not about trying to bring China down at all. It's just about defending American interests.
And yet, China controls nearly 70% of the global rare earth supply. I guess the refining part of it, raising questions about the leverage that we have here. What's the leverage of the United States, and how long will it take to wean ourselves off of that dependence on the refining of these rare earth minerals?
Well, with respect to your latter point on rare earth minerals, I think you know that the United States made an equity investment into the Mountain Pass mine several weeks ago. The president recently signed, an order to have a road built out to Ambler Road, which is an area in Alaska where there are critical minerals. We have taken a stake in the specialty metals company. I think there are more things coming down the road. So I think the Chinese actions have really galvanized not only the government, but even private industry in the United States. You saw J.P. Morgan earlier this week announce a $1.5 trillion fund to invest in manufacturing in the U.S. for critical sectors. So, the U.S., both private and public, I think is on their way to really diversifying and de-risking from that leverage situation.
And how long do you expect that to take? We've talked in the past about how you and your colleagues and the president has been really monetizing the U.S.'s balance sheet by doing what you just said, taking stakes in various companies. I understand taking a stake in Mountain Pass to get that refining expertise. Walk us through the president's thinking on this monetizing of the balance sheet.
Well, when you take a look at how the United States has approached its industrial production over the past 30 years, it's really just allowed, globalization to determine, where capital and production is happening. And on net, it means it's been happening in China, Southeast Asia, and Mexico to some degree. And so the president, he understands that we are way overdue for a course correction. And so, he's taking what frankly is a light touch on the economy because we want market mechanisms to work as much as possible. But imposing tariffs to protect domestic production here, putting, the imprimatur of the U.S. government on important companies and sectors, making sure that the world knows and companies know that the United States is going to stand behind those critical sectors.
Right. So will there be more stakes in public companies in that regard, in rare earth related companies?
I mean, it's possible. The main thing we're looking for is to have our own ability to obtain rare earths. That's what we're looking for. And ideally, if you have a private company that's able to do.
I wish that damn noise in the background during the interview there was gone. All right, let's go to Bloomberg here. But before I do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin D3. This is a cofactor for gene expression. It also helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis because they're infected. It also helps with cardiovascular health and building bone density. Do some resistance training. But get the vitamin D3, especially for the fall and the winter, because it's really important to mitigate what's coming. So please take my advice, get this vitamin D3, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, take it for the fall and the winter. Don't get your cells to go into apoptosis so it can get rid of infected cells. Super important. All right? Super important. Go to my store and get the vitamin D3. All right. Want to listen to The Credit Risks by Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan.
Hello traders and welcome back to the TradingView channel. In this video, we're introducing our new AI indicator, which we developed in partnership with OpenAI.
JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon issued a warning on the earnings call Tuesday. He said, quote, "I probably shouldn't say this." Okay, but of course Jamie said it, because that's Jamie. "But when you see one cockroach, there are probably more." Dimon was referring to the bankruptcies recently of the auto dealer Tricolor Holdings and auto parts conglomerate First Brands Group. But there has been clapback about that. RBC Capital Markets Managing Director and head large cap U.S. Bank analyst Gerard Cassidy is here. And when we talk about the clapback, Gerard, it was private credit lender Blue Owl. And the CEO, co-CEO Mark Lipschultz today had a message for Jamie Dimon when he spoke at the CAIS investment conference in California. And he was like, well, we're not seeing a rise in defaults. We're not seeing companies struggling. It's the big banks who might want to look at their own books for any cockroaches. So who's right on this one? Is it a credit quality problem? Are you seeing any signs of that?
Liz, we're not seeing any signs. And even though the banks...
This is important because remember what happened with SVB and then the market crashed, right? And then it recovered, but there was some worry and it also affected the crypto market. If this is true and this becomes more systemic in the context of the doom loop in the UK and in the context of the doom loop in France with their over-indebtedness and their politics unstable, with the backdrop of the tariff wars with China, this could be a impetus for the bursting of the AI bubble, and people need to deleverage, right? And the market starts to go down. See, AI bubble doesn't have to happen because it's directly related to AI. Something tangential, like the financial industry, could burst the bubble. And we may be seeing something here that's starting to emerge. Maybe not, but it's something that needs to be paid attention to because this is very similar to the SVB and what happened. Now, there are different reasons for this, but the point here is that there was a financial institution that had problems that led to a decline in equities. And with overvaluation of these hyperscalers and the Mag 7, this could be the very thing that bursts the bubble.
I mean, specifically, yesterday pointed out the problems in that one particular credit. That credit is alleged a fraud, as is the large
automobile parts manufacturer, First Brand. There's allegations of maybe, a fraud there as well. So we believe at this point those are idiosyncratic. But to Jimmy Dimon's point, when there's a credit debacle and the trends really deteriorate, I'm with him on the cockroach theory, but these two, I don't believe lead to a cockroach theory just yet.
I guess Jamie would argue, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that there has been a lot of lending off the big banks' books, and it has been done by the private credit guys, and those are the ones that these companies, most companies go to these days to get loans. Granted, they pay a higher interest rate, but they get them, and they don't have to deal with all of the, I guess, paperwork in certain cases and publicity about it. So my question really is, we can't really see all of that happening. Are you worried at all that, as Warren Buffett says, when the tide does go out, you see who's swimming naked?
We are very worried about it, Liz. And the reason being is when you go through the past credit cycles, what you need prior to the credit cycle is a period of rapid loan growth. And we have certainly seen that in private credit. So certainly we're not seeing any evidence today of real problems. But in the next credit cycle, which is normally joined with an economic recession, we are going to see credit deterioration in private credit as well as the banks. And that's when, to your point about Warren Buffett, what he said, that's when we're going to find out who really has the problems. Now, private credit isn't as levered as the banks are, so there's that differential. But I would say, as you pointed out again, that they're lending at higher rates of interest. And part of the reason is those credits are riskier. The banks are regulated, private credit is not, and therefore the banks have to be more conservative in their lending.
All right, there are investors here who are still ready, no matter what, to put money to work. Where do you see the opportunity, Gerard?
We anticipate, Liz, that if the Fed cuts another 50 basis points at the short end of the curve over the next 3 to 6 months, the yield curve will steepen. And we'll have a Fed funds rate around 3.25 to 3.5, and possibly a 10-year over 4%. It's been 20 years since the banks have experienced an environment where the Fed funds rate's been over 3 with a positive yield curve of over 75 basis points. That is a very lucrative market for lending. Therefore, the regional banks should do better because more of their revenues come from lending. Banks like Fifth Third, KeyCorp are good examples of investors looking, for investors looking to make that play. Bank of America is another one. They pointed out today they see possibly 6% growth in net interest income next year, which for a large bank like that is quite powerful.
So KeyCorp, as you mentioned, okay, they're down today. KeyCorp's down about 2%, but as you look at those names, they are the larger regionals. Is there something better about those versus the smaller cap ones?
The smaller cap ones are certainly something investors can look to, and years ago, Liz, they were often considered to be great acquisition targets. But because of the change in accounting 20 years ago, the acquisition premiums are not as substantial as they used to be. So it's tougher to make an investment case to make money owning a basket of takeover targets, if you will. So sticking with the larger regionals, we think, is the way to go. And there's also some smaller regionals. They tend to focus more on commercial real estate lending, which, as you know, is not a real problem for the smaller banks because they don't do the downtown office properties, which has been a problem.
Yes.
But what's interesting is the big regionals have the C&I lending, commercial lending.
Consolidation in the regionals. Are you seeing any of that? Do you expect to see more of that? There's thousands of them.
Oh, there sure are. And when you take a look at them today, we have about 4,300 banks in America. That's down from about 18,000 in the early 80s. So consolidation has been a way of life for the banking industry. We had a big deal announced not too long ago. Fifth Third is buying Comerica. We expect to see more consolidation, and we expect to see amongst the bigger regionals, but also amongst the smaller regionals. And Liz, part of the reason is that this new regulatory environment is very supportive of consolidation and has expedited the approval process, which has made it more lucrative or more efficient for the banks to acquire one another.
Gerard, thank you. It's been a busy couple of days with these earnings, but we'll continue to watch it. Thank you so much.
You turn one idea into a brand that means business. Amazon, always building.
This very significantly at the moment with their, they've taken probably, it's estimated 40% of Russia's oil production offline, to the point that 2 weeks ago, the Russians had to admit that they have for the first time started importing petrol. So, you know, the Ukrainians are doing fantastically well against all the odds.
Thanks for being with us. It's the evening edition. Estonia, Finland and Sweden have pledged to increase spending on the purchase of US weapons for Ukraine at a meeting of NATO defence ministers today. Meanwhile, more pressure on President Putin is expected, with Rachel Reeves ramping up Britain's sanctions on Russian oil companies. She also wants to start arming Ukraine based on those frozen Russian assets. She's trying to gather support for that, as well as President Trump teasing the possibility of arming Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles. I'm joined now by Cormac Smith, the former special advisor for Ukraine's foreign minister. Cormac, we'll have to go brief if that's okay. What are the most interesting things to you of that melee? We are starting to get a renewed interest after, of course, a big focus in the Middle East. There is renewed interest on Ukraine now.
Yeah, look, I've been saying for over 3.5 years, arm Ukraine complete to sanction Russia back to the Stone Age, and we haven't done that properly yet. We haven't given the Ukrainians what they wanted. I think the two things that are most interesting to me from that is the possibility of Tomahawk cruise missiles from America. We don't know yet. Donald Trump has said he's thinking about it and he wants to know what targets they will use. Tomahawks alone will probably not be a game changer, but they will be a very, very significant addition to Ukraine's arsenal, and it will put more and more elements of Russia's logistics chain, such as their oil industry and their supply camps, under at an extreme peril. And they don't have the range of the new Pelican missile the Ukrainians have developed. They will be used in, if the Ukrainians get them, they will be used in conjunction with that. But my understanding is they are probably more accurate and more stealthy. Stealthy being they are very, very hard for the Russians to detect on the way in and shoot them down. So I really, really hope that they get the Tomahawks. The second, I think, is really broadly on sanctions. There's been too much talk about freeing up this 200 billion of frozen Russian assets and giving it to Ukraine to allow them buy weapons. Russia has probably cost Ukraine between $500 billion and $1 trillion was the last time I saw a price put on the reconstruction. Entire cities have been wiped off the map. But also to finish the sanctions properly, to go after the shadow fleet, and also to go after those countries with secondary sanctions who are still buying oil from Russia. Yeah. I could just say that Russia still earns in excess of $20 billion every month from export of oil. That's what's fueling their war effort. Ukraine is eating into this very significantly at the moment with their, they've taken probably, it's estimated 40% of Russia's oil production offline, to the point that 2 weeks ago, the Russians had to admit that they have for the first time started importing petrol. So, you know, the Ukrainians are doing fantastically well against all the odds. We really need to give them every assistance that they need. And as I said at the start, and as I've been saying for over 3.5 years, that means arming them to the teeth properly and sanctioning Russia back to the Stone Age. Was that brief enough for you?
Very good indeed. Cormac Smith, former special advisor to Ukraine's foreign minister, and the suggestion with frozen assets, by the way, with £200 billion.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the zeolite. This will detoxify your body from heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. This will bind to them and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. You should be taking this every day. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue. Drink the filtered water. Take it every day and detoxify your body. When you're detoxifying your body, guess what? You're helping your immune system, your endocrine system, even your brain function. I partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we created these deodorants that are dual purpose. You can get it in citrus or in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. These deodorants are for males or for females. You take it every day, use it as a deodorant, but it'll also help to detoxify your body. It has no aluminum, no baking soda. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. Very high quality ingredients. And when you detoxify your body, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system. Super important to stay healthy.
Is that they're leverage for loans to Ukraine. That is the proposal that Rachel Reeves is trying to get backing for.
So, good morning.
Your favorite movies are on YouTube. Enjoy the latest releases.
Don't I know it?
Get HBO Max, Paramount Plus, MGM Plus.
So, good morning. I really want to welcome Pete Hexet here to NATO again, to the Defense Ministers meeting. This will be an important meeting because we had a successful summit in The Hague. And there is now much more cash on the table. There is firepower coming out of our defense industry, which is so important. And we are doing everything collectively to keep Ukraine strong. For everything we're doing, Mark. It's great to see you. Great to see you.
Great to be here. And Mark mentioned it, firepower. That's what is coming. We expect it is coming from NATO. And it was a historic summit just a couple of months ago, brought about by leadership of President Trump to say, we need our allies to step up. And they did, and they have in those commitments. Now those commitments will soon translate into capabilities, which is the most important aspect of it. And one part of that, of course, is Pearl, is the initiative where European countries buy U.S. weapons, transfer to NATO for the fight in Ukraine to bring peace to that conflict. And if there's anything we've learned under President Trump, it is the active application of peace through strength. You get peace when you are strong, not when you use strong words or wag your finger. You get it when you have strong and real capabilities that adversaries respect. But also note a historic moment as well for a lot of things to happen, given what the president's been able to do in Gaza and throughout the Middle East. I think the world is seeing that we have a peace president who seeks that peace through standing by those that stand with the United States and stand for peace. Which is what we saw there, and I hope we can see in Ukraine.
I had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin, but he just doesn't want to end that war. And I think it's making him look very bad. He could end it. He could end it quickly. And I have to tell you, I give credit because who would think that Ukraine could have fought Russia for 4 years to essentially a standstill? What we're talking about in Ukraine, yeah. I mean, I have the president coming in on Friday. And I know what he has to say. He wants weapons. He would like to have tomahawks. Everyone else wants stuff. And we have a lot of tomahawks. Tomahawk is do you need any tomahawks in Argentina?
We will continue and expand our support for Ukraine. With new contracts, Germany will provide additional support amounting to over 2 billion euros. This will include a Pearl package to totaling $500 million US. The package addresses a number of urgent requirements of Ukraine. It provides air defense systems, Patriot interceptors, radar systems, and precision-guided artillery, rockets, and ammunition.
All countries need to translate goals into guns, commitments into capabilities, and pledges into power. That's all that matters, hard power. It's the only thing belligerents actually respect. Your continued investment and leadership are vital to helping Ukraine defend itself and to bring an end to this conflict. Peace through strength. Now, if this war does not end, if there is no path to peace in the short term, then the United States, along with our allies, will take the steps necessary to impose costs on Russia for its continued aggression. If we must take this step, the U.S. War Department stands ready to do our part in ways that only the United States can do. This is not a war that started on President Trump's watch, but it will end on his watch. So let us seize this moment, strongly forge peace in Ukraine, and let's bring peace through strength. Thank you very much.
Funding needs under the Pearl next year will reach $12 to $20 billion. If needed, we are ready to discuss coordination of this project. The next priority is Ukrainian-made drones and missiles. We needed more FPV, ISR, and other drones to hold the front line. We continue to emphasize an urgent funding needs of $4 billion. In 2026, we will be able to build up to 10 million drones if partners commit the necessary funding.
Welcome to Drone Wars. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the drops or the lozenges. Be prepared for the fall and the winter. Once you have that throat irritation, mitigate it right away by taking the drops or the lozenges. You can get the drops in blueberry, in cherry, and in honey and lemon flavor. Very high quality, made from structural nanosilver. And also you can get the lozenges in elderberry zinc. Get a few bags for your household, have some at work, have some at home. You never know when you need it. Take it right away to mitigate the problem. Make sure you're prepared for the fall and the winter. Super important. Please go to my store, use discount 5 to get $5 off any order. All right, let's listen into CNBC.
At Janus Henderson Investors, we believe working together is the way to work better. With your goals and our expertise in perfect harmony.
For more, we want to bring in CNBC's senior economics reporter Steve Leisman and John Riding, the chief economic advisor at Green Capital. Steve, you go first. What do you see in the numbers?
Okay. I mean, this is now the most important Philly Fed index ever issued, right? Because it's all we got. And I do want to say a little bit more detail here. The prices paid index did go up 49.2 versus 46.8, but the outlook is actually a little bit better. The 6-month business outlook, 6-month capital expenditures outlook, both improved and at pretty decent numbers there. So you don't know if because things are so bad, people think they have to get better, or people legitimately think things will get better. We're going to want to just follow that because it's a pretty good outlook. Whereas the current assessment of the current situation, which is the data Rick correctly gave us, I do want to do one thing, which Troy Lepka from SMBC. Nico, who worked with Joe Livornia before he went to Treasury, did a clever thing. It's clever because I thought of it a long time ago and never could do it, but he did it. What he did is he took all of these Fed surveys that we talked about, and he took the 5 that have employment and price indices, and he put them all together, and hopefully we have that chart, which shows us what's going on with employment and prices at each of these different surveys. And now zero in, folks, if you could, on the right side. What does it tell you? Prices are higher, employment is flat. So this really confirms, this is September data.
That goes all the way back to 2000.
You have to do that because you want to see how it tracks, right? You want to see how the two work together. And overall, I'm not showing you these graphs. The blue line tracks inflation very well. Mm-hmm. The orange line employment, it's so volatile. Directionally, it goes in the right direction when you total the 5 of them up, but it doesn't work on a month-to-month basis quite so well. You can see employment's flat from these 5 surveys, and the prices are generally elevated, though not as elevated as they were during the pandemic. It's as good a contemporary, what do you want to say, aggregation of these surveys that's out there. They're out there talking to businesses, getting responses from the 5 different Fed banks that do this, and it's a proxy. It's another proxy, and I think it's a proxy that the Fed is looking at and is helping inform their decisions now.
Okay, John Riding, I want to ask you about that gap between the orange line and the blue line that we were just saying. That kind of matches up with what Jay Powell has said recently, that basically the balance of concern is probably falling to the jobs, to the employment side of the mandate at this point, less so on prices. Is that what you think is the case, and is that what maybe Fed Chairman Powell is looking at?
It's not what I think is the case, actually. Chair Powell has said, we're in a difficult situation where the price stability mandate and the employment mandate are at odds with each other. And the Fed has said, without specifying any details in the past, the leg of the mandate that is further away from our objective is the one we will focus on. So inflation is close to 3%. These indicators, both from the New York Fed and what you're reading here, aren't showing very encouraging signs that we're going to be trending back to the 2% inflation target. And in the economy, the unemployment rate is 1/10 of a point above what the Fed thinks is full employment. So this whole idea that the balance of risks has switched to the labor market, the argument to me is very contorted. And the Fed, these surveys are good, but to be honest, we kind of ignored them when we had real data. So they haven't gotten any better. It's not like they said in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. This is the case of the one-eyed man with cataracts is king. It really doesn't track very well.
I want to emphasize what John is saying. You had Bowman the other day saying we're headed back to 2%. You had Myron saying there is no inflation from tariffs. It's a bit of kind of wishful thinking out there.
It's very wishful thinking. We have to think back in 2021, when the Fed was maybe more of a coherent entity, they went through the whole inflation is transitory routine, which turned out simply not to be true. So we're in a situation where we seem to be headed headlong. Market surprise in last hour, I looked 98% chance for a rate cut on October 29th. Headlong into easing policy while inflation is headed in the wrong direction. The Fed tells us inflation expectations are anchored, but the University of Michigan survey, another indicator that we get, it says the 5-year expected inflation rate is 3.7%, which is nearly double the Fed's official target. So I do not get why the focus, well, I mean, I can do, but we probably won't talk about that, why the focus is on cutting rates to address labor market weakness, which, by the way, is what the Fed did for 100 basis points between September and December of last year. They took out insurance at that time for potential weakening in the labor market.
The best way to not worry about your blood pressure
is what?
Don't measure it.
Don't measure it. Unfortunately, it's a silent killer, and so is inflation. And you don't want. But here's the one thing: am I wrong that we hear again and again that now we're just matching firings and hirings, and we're at this static at the level. No one can ask for really a wage increase. Now, if you get the one-time tariff bump, you don't get that wage price spiral.
Let me make that more technical than what you're
But
saying.
a weaker job market will bring inflation.
Right.
Housing,
right.
With the housing shelter costs coming down, we'll get to 2.
This is Waller's idea. This is Myron's idea that there is not a route for inflation to create for the job market to create the inflation from the tariffs that would
we know the Phillips curve doesn't work. Inflation is not a labor market phenomenon. Inflation is a monetary phenomenon. And that was something that Milton Friedman made clear back in his 1968 American Economic Association. And Joe, to your point on the labor market, yes, hiring is marvelous and firing is very low. But we're seeing studies come out that say one of the things that's holding down hiring is AI, and it's substituting for those entry-level jobs. It's not a shortage of demand. So what do interest rate cuts do? They lower the cost of capital and increase the incentive to invest.
But will AI be deflationary, the biggest deflationary force we've ever seen?
After it's inflationary. After all of it. Well, look, it's not fair, because my friend Rick Santelli is steadfast on this issue that the Fed is ignoring inflation, and I think he gets the last word, Rick. We have to go to the break, but
yeah, listen in all the time. You need to move in.
Rick has been steadfast on this. He's got hard money the whole time.
That's right. And listen, I remember John Riding when he was at Bear Stearns. He's also a hard money guy. He's been spouting good economics for decades, and I agree with him on pretty much every score there. Inflation is being ignored. The labor market signals are questionable in terms of the extent of the weakness. So my final question is, why are they going to ease 2 times, and why is the market happy with that? That part's easy. Market's always happy with lower rates. But in the end, I don't see a catalyst for doing it. John Riding, you get an A+.
I've been saying for over a year that the Federal Reserve should not be lowering rates because of the inflation being above the 2% target, and that unemployment is with a 4 handle as a percentage. All right, let's listen into Newt Gingrich talking about Mamdani.
Welcome back. The government shutdown now enters day 16 as the Senate fails to advance the GOP-backed clean continuing resolution for a 9th time yesterday. Democrats are already poised to reject it again when they vote again this morning for the 10th time. My sources are telling me that they are waiting for Saturday's No Kings rally in Washington before any movement is made so that they can discuss fighting Trump. Party leaders trading shots on Capitol Hill yesterday, blaming one another for the shutdown. Meanwhile, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, remaining concerned about keeping service members paid while the doors stayed closed in Washington. Watch.
Not a good day on Capitol Hill, not a good day across America, because real Americans are feeling the pain due to the Democrats' political nonsense. One segment of the population that truly deserves better treatment than the Democrats are giving them, that is our military. Today, if it weren't for the bold leadership of President Trump helping us to protect our military, everyone needs to understand that 1.3 million active duty service members would be missing a paycheck. And by the way, all other federal employees, federal workers, and the Democrats have voted over and over to stop it. It also shows a very strong contrast between the party that is working for the people and trying to keep the government open and do the right thing, and the party that is engaging in all this nonsense.
Joining me now is the former Speaker of the House and Fox News contributor, Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, a pleasure. Always nice to see you. Thank you for being here. Give us your impact and analysis on this government shutdown.
Well, I think the Democrats have decided on a strategy, partly to prove to their more left-wing elements that they're tough, that they're going to stand up to President Trump. And frankly, if you saw Schumer's comment the other day that every day it gets better, you can tell he's not talking about the families that aren't getting paid, the people who don't have money, the programs that aren't going forward. This is a very narrow and I think dangerous position for the Democrats to be in, because you end up ultimately, the Republicans have passed a clean continuing resolution to keep the government open, came out of the House, has no problems, except the Democrats just said no. You have to ask yourself, if they're willing to talk about issues after the government reopens, and they clearly, Senator Thune, Speaker Johnson, President Trump, are willing to talk after the government comes open, why is Schumer keeping the government closed? And I think ultimately this is bad for the country, and ultimately it's bad for the Democratic Party.
And that's really where the issue is. I mean, if it's bad for the country, will the Republicans have to cave at some point and say, well, we'll do a temporary subsidies return or something to come to the middle, because President Trump is not going to accept this government shutdown for, I mean, how long can this go before somebody blinks?
Well, I think when he was president the first time, that went a pretty long time. I think the president and the director of the budget, Russ Vought, are using this opportunity to reshape the federal government, to cut out various projects in Democratic states, and to shrink the government. So I'm not so sure that President Trump feels the heat. He went to the Middle East for an extraordinary trip that was historic. He's going to go to Korea for another key trip. He's staying very busy. If you watch his schedule, it's amazing how many things he does. And I don't sense that for him, his personal activities aren't shut down and they're not inconvenienced. At some point, it becomes a challenge. And I think that Speaker Johnson's right to point out that, everyday folks are going to get hurt.
Yeah.
There are people out there right now who would like to go to work. I have a good friend who's a research scientist. She can't go to her laboratory. It's driving her crazy.
Yeah.
And I think eventually we'll find a solution, but I don't think it'll be caving into the Democrats' demands.
Yeah, no, I agree. And at some point, markets are going to start worrying as well. Don't forget, we just came off of a great quarter for the banks with capital markets activity soaring, IPOs and deals in the pipeline, but there's a ton more in the pipeline. And right now, they can't file for an IPO. They can't go forward on these deals because the Securities and Exchange Commission is closed. So, at some point, it becomes a real...
Too bad. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night Formula. This will help you to sleep. It has tryptophan, melatonin, and passion flower, and GABA to help you get into those 3 to 5 cycles of deep sleep and REM sleep When you have that regularly, you're going to be able to detoxify your body. You'll be well rested in the morning, and it'll help to consolidate memory. This is a great neurostack. Please go to my store, take it every night, drink it with filtered water. Vitamin B complex, very important to boost up that cellular metabolism. The first 4 B vitamins helps with the health of the mitochondria, so you'll have more energy. It helps with the electron transport chain to produce the ATP that you need for your cell. And vitamin B complex will protect your neurons. You need to protect your neurons, especially when you get older. And clarity factor, a very powerful neurostack to help you to concentrate on tasks. It'll get rid of that brain fog. It'll allow you to concentrate. And by taking this on a regular basis and drinking it with filtered water, what's going to happen is it's going to improve the neuroplasticity. Your neurons will build additional connections to each other. Those dendritic connections are going to improve. You'll be able to think faster, and your memory will improve. So please go to my store and get the clarity factor. So a great stack here, especially neurostack, the Good Night Formula, the clarity factor, and the vitamin B complex. And the vitamin B complex also boosts up your cellular metabolism. So please go to my store, get this stack, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Again, use discount 5. It's all caps, discount number 5.
In terms of the economy as well. So we'll see about that. But you're right. I mean, President Trump has been working hard. He's got this peace deal, a massive achievement there, and he's going to South Korea and Seoul to discuss what's happening with China, with Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the APEC summit. What do you see as the breaking point here in terms of the China relationship? Are you worried that these aggressions are spiking again?
Well, I'm not worried in the sense that I think, look, there's an inevitable competition between a rising China that wants to be a world power and the dominant world power. Historically, we've seen it happen before. Wilhelmine Germany rising against the British Empire, for example. It can lead ultimately to war, which would be a disaster, or it can lead to learning how to manage the conflict. I think that the president is confident that ultimately, economically, we have a much stronger hand than China does. And frankly, the Chinese are teaching us what we need to do, for example, with rare earth minerals in getting mines in the U.S., Canada, Australia, other places. Over time, the Chinese are playing a losing hand, and I think that the president knows that, and I don't think he's inclined, again, much like with Schumer, he's not inclined to back down in dealing with Xi Jinping because he thinks he has a stronger hand.
Meanwhile, the dirty tricks keep on coming. I mean, you would think that everybody on both sides of the aisle agrees with what you just said, but House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan is demanding that former special counsel Jack Smith testify before his committee over the prosecutions of President Trump and the surveillance of numerous GOP senators' phones. I mean, they tapped the phones of Republicans. Jordan writes this to Smith: "Your team sought to silence President Trump by restricting his public statements about the case. These actions undermined the integrity of the criminal justice system and violated the core responsibility of federal prosecutors to do justice. Your testimony is necessary to understand the full extent to which the Biden-Harris Justice Department weaponized federal law enforcement." You know, we spoke with Bill Hagerty, the Tennessee senator, who was actually one of those senators. 8 Republicans who's had their...
You sell it, we ship it. Put the strength of Amazon's technology and transportation network behind your business.
Republicans who's had their phones tapped by Jack Smith. Watch this.
It's not the first time it's happened to me either, Maria. It happened to me when I was, again, in Trump's first election. I was a finance chair. I went into Trump Tower to help him in 2016 after the election. We were surveilled there. I think you may remember Michael Flynn was taken out through that process. Again, this was an Obama era surveillance. Now, this time in the Biden administration, they've decided to surveil 8 senators and a Republican congressman. The one thing we all have in common is that we're Republicans. And I guess my crime must be that I've been an ally of President Trump for years and served in his administration. So it's just shocking that this would happen, that they would surveil our calls, that Jack Smith, just after putting President Trump under indictment, decides to come after his allies in the United States Senate. Sent a letter to Verizon, the carrier, on Friday demanding that they let me know why they'd done this. They said that they were operating under a subpoena.
So in other words, the Democrats sent a subpoena to Verizon and forced them to release the records.
That's what that seems to be the case according to Verizon's response to my query. So I want to find out exactly who it was that had that issue, who was working for Jack Smith, what the pretext was. There was no pretext. It was just that we were allies of President Trump.
That's pretty extraordinary news.
Look, Jack Smith is a peculiarly bad lawyer. He had 9 justices unanimously repudiate what he did in trying to destroy a Republican governor about a decade ago. 9. When you get a 9-0 vote saying that you're guilty of having broken the law, the very fact that they would keep him in the Justice Department and the fact that they would appoint him to do this is a sign of willful bad faith, because Jack Smith is a very vicious prosecutor who has broken the law, been repudiated by the Supreme Court, should never have been in this position, and we're going to discover he did a lot of things that were illegal, and that he's probably personally at risk now of being indicted and convicted for things that clearly broke the law.
Wow. Meanwhile, let me switch gears to the New York City race for mayor. Zoran Mamdani joined Martha McCallum in Fox Studios yesterday. He refused to give any credit to President Trump for brokering the peace deal in the Middle East. Watch this. Would you give President Trump credit or not, to any extent? Credit or not?
I think it's too early to do so.
Too early to say.
But if it proves to be something that is lasting, something that is durable, then I think that's where you give credit. I am thankful and I have hope that it will actually endure and that it will be lasting. And I continue to have concerns because I've seen reports still, just in the last few days, that 5 Palestinians were killed by the Israeli military. And that's what gives me pause about issuing any kind of praise or celebration at a moment when it is still so in its infancy.
Unbelievable. Newt, your reaction?
Well, I mean, it shows you how radical Mamdani is. What we have is video of Hamas executing people in the streets of Gaza, seeking to reclaim power, and literally lining people up, having them on their knees, and shooting them in the back of their head.
Wow.
That's on video from yesterday. It's clear that Hamas is in danger of breaking up the whole thing. The president has indicated strongly that if Hamas goes this route, that he will back up, literally going in and destroying them. There are 8,000 or 9,000 Hamas terrorists who want to reclaim control of Gaza. They're going to lose. That was the real meaning of the meeting at Sharm el-Sheikh, where you had 27 countries signing up. And my hunch is you're going to see a remarkable support for getting to a peaceful region. And Hamas now is sort of the last stand. But we shouldn't kid ourselves. Hamas is very dangerous. They have not given in completely. And that's still a very dangerous case. Look, Mamdani is about as left-wing and out of touch with reality as any major candidate we've seen. And I think you're going to discover in the debate tonight, this guy is, President Trump calls him a communist. I would say he's a big government socialist with weird ideas. But having him as a leading Democrat is going to become a nightmare for the Democratic Party.
Yeah, well, we'll watch that debate tonight. President Trump, meanwhile, had a beautiful ceremony yesterday awarding Charlie Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom on what would have been his 32nd birthday. Your reaction?
Well, look, it's such a tragedy. Charlie was a great, great person. I remember we were at the National Convention and I did his show talking about the effort to assassinate President Trump. I look back on that and we had some pictures from that. I did his show many times. He was just an astonishing, charismatic leader who had, I think, 3,300 chapters on high schools and college campuses. And it was a tragedy that he was assassinated. And as a sign of how dangerous things are, I'm delighted that his widow, Erica, is continuing his work. And I'm delighted that President Trump and Vice President Vance have been so publicly supportive.
Newt, congratulations to your wife.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the complete multivitamin. This is easy to digest. You take it every day. This is going to be the foundation to slow down the aging process. The complete multivitamin has the vitamins that you need as cofactors for proper enzymatic activity, so your cells will perform better. Very important. Also take it with the probiotic. You can get it in powdered form or in veggie cap form. A good probiotic is going to help with the gut biome, help you to absorb your nutrients, help with your immune system. also help with their skin health. A good gut biome will also help with brain function. So please go to my store, get the probiotics. Also, get Gladiator barley. Gladiator barley will help you to build muscle. If you do resistance training, you take the Gladiator barley. This is a month supply. You can mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk. But take it every day. Do some resistance training. They'll bring down inflammation. They'll recover quicker from your workout. But by bringing down inflammation and detoxifying your body on a regular basis, you're going to be helping your immune system, your endocrine system, even your brain function, and your cardiovascular system. And you soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. This is very powerful stuff. This is an heirloom barley, heavily micronutrient heirloom barley. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator barley. And also consider getting the Boomer Boost. The Boomer Boost will help multiple systems. It's going to help with your brain function, help with your heart, help with your vascular system, help with your musculature, increase your energy levels, and speed up your metabolism. This is a great way to control A1C levels and to get healthy and slow down the aging process. So please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. Take it every day, and you can stack it with Gladiator barley, and you'll get added benefits in controlling your A1C levels. And if you're an athlete, take it before or after your workout, and you will get strength benefits. But again, stacking this together, even if you're not an athlete, is super good for you to slow down the aging process and to boost up that immune system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. Make sure you use discount 5 to get $5 off any order. All right, we're going to be playing this video about socialism threat. Right, this is Fox News.
So New York City frontrunner Zohran Mamdani will have to defend his policies on the debate stage for the first time tonight, alongside fellow candidates Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Sliwa. This comes after the Democratic Socialist told Martha McCallum he will raise taxes on the rich to pay for his social programs.
I believe these are the most straightforward ways that we can actually fund universal childcare, making buses fast and free. And I've said that the two clear ways to do so, raising personal income taxes on the top 1% by 2%, and raising the corporate tax to match that of New Jersey's corporate tax at 11.5%. If you're making $1 million in New York City, or more than that, you can afford to pay 2% more.
I guess we can. Now let's bring in Fox business anchor David Asman. David, what do you think?
Well, first of all, he talks about, it's all the rich that's going to pay for it. Right. One of the things that's going to happen with the free bus plan is going to cost the MTA. The MTA is the transportation agency in New York City. It's going to cost them an extra $600 million a year. How do you pay for that? You raise taxes in the taxi. Every time you get in a taxi in New York, you immediately get like a $5 tax. That's going to go up. What does that mean? That means that taxi drivers are going to be paying for it because they get less tips.
You mean the ones who went on the hunger strike?
Exactly. The ones that he has such heart for. By the way, that smile of his, I interviewed Fidel Castro a couple of times back in the day. He's long gone, but he was the sort of godfather of capitalism in the Americas. He had that same kind of sweet smile. It hides intent so well. He only answered one question, really. I mean, Martha tried, she tried. He only answered one question. He got her every time he avoided a question. He did it with a smile. Don't buy into that smile.
He wants to make New York City affordable by taxing the successful. First off, you've been doing a series on social.
I have the first two, and you were kind enough to have me on the previous 2 weeks. We're on socialism's failures abroad. We bring it back home now with this one, and we start by talking about, it used to be both parties were against socialism. Not anymore. Watch. Presidents Ronald Reagan and FDR represented different parties, but both recognized that government safety nets could suffocate our free market if they grew too big. In the State of the Union address in 1935, FDR said, quote, "Continued dependence upon relief induces a spiritual and moral disintegration, fundamentally destructive to the national fiber." Ronald Reagan put it more simply.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Since then, government has grown far bigger than either could have imagined. But American socialists insist that government's not big enough. They suggest that all our needs, including food, housing, and health care, are a national right.
The socialist who wants to be the next mayor of New York has even suggested a government takeover of private housing.
We'll have to go beyond the market. We won't decommodify housing overnight, but we know what we have to do.
Decommodify is Marxist newspeak for removing the tradable value of an asset. But do American homeowners really want to see their single most important asset lose its value? As for public housing, whether in the South Bronx or Chicago, most of those experiments have ended as filthy, crime-ridden failures. Socialized medicine isn't much different. Even Bernie Sanders now admits that Obamacare hasn't fixed healthcare.
Remember, right now, our healthcare system is broken.
Ronald Reagan would remind Bernie that Obamacare and fully socialized healthcare systems are broken because there's too much government, not too little. Both major political parties used to agree that what made this country the most prosperous in the world was our free market, not socialism. Mamdani's talk, the way he speaks is filled with this Marxist jargon. Of course, he's got that smile, and he doesn't call it Marxism, but that's exactly what decommodify means in terms of housing. New York City relies on tax revenue from housing, from property taxes, more than any other particular tax that we get. If in fact that revenue goes away, this city's going to go broke in no time flat, in a New York minute, as we like to say.
So does he control the taxes anyway?
No, but he has a lot of friends. The folks in Albany are watching very closely because the left-wing forces in the city are also reflective of what's happening in Albany. Albany, the capital of New York. So you see what is happening here, spreading there. If he is successful, or at least gets a lot of good publicity the first year, which he probably will from the New York Times, etc. They're against him now, kind of, but they're gonna. I suspect they're gonna change, and his smile is gonna win them out until the payments come due, and then the whole city's gonna go down.
It will, and the president is not going to be a friend in the Oval Office. He's made that clear. Because it feels like it's throwing money out the window if you give it to him. All right, David, great series. I'm learning a lot.
Thanks for giving me the time.
Decommodify. That's a new word.
Decommodify.
That's my word
in
today.
Marxist lexicon.
Yes, that's my problem. I don't have a Marxist lexicon.
I'll get you one for Christmas.
If you don't mind.
Yeah.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brighteon Channel.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. Collagen is dual purpose. It'll help with your skin, your hair, your nails, but also your musculature, your bone density, and your joint health. Take it every day. It's a month's supply. It's a powder. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk. I mix it with soft foods like hummus. You can mix it with yogurt or applesauce. That's another great way to do it. But take collagen every day. Really important. And do resistance training to help with your musculature and your joint health. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this very high quality collagen.
I think I was with Jack Anderson's column at the time, and we did a story that the Pentagon approved the day after. They modified some of the script, but they didn't say we're not going to help you at all. Right. So that's one of my earliest memories, probably my earliest memory.
Fantastic. You should get him, by the way, off the air. Ask him about the food court. Nobody will believe it. But I want to hear about what happens now, because the power of no is important, and the images of you guys walking out yesterday was an important moment. Now, of course, Pete Hegseth is waving goodbye, bye-bye on social media. How do you now cover the Pentagon without being in a building?
Well, hey, this is a good question, because now it's going to relegate to phone calls and emails. Phone calls, emails, and meeting people outside the building. So a good example yesterday of the importance of being there. There's a number of reasons I'll let you know, but yesterday, I was outside in the corridor leaning on a garbage can area. It was not like a regular can, but just leaning, talking to somebody. There was a rumor that that Hegseth's plane had turned back to Europe. I wanted, being there, you could buttonhole people. A guy passed me, an official I deal with. Yeah. Confirmed off the record, cracked windshields. I was literally, like, my arm was on cracked windshield. I went and I messaged our editors from my phone, cracked windshield, more to follow, and not endangered. If his plane had a major problem and it, God forbid, crashed or something major, and we were not in the building, you'd be relegated to phone calls that were not answered, emails that would take forever to get back, and a general panic on what the hell happened to the defense secretary's plane. So the value of being there in a crisis is exponentially important. Robert Bales, an Army sergeant, butchered a number of Afghan civilians like 12 years ago. I was in the building. We were trying to get confirmation of Bales' name. CNN broke it. I was able to grab then spokesman John Kirby as he was walking into his office. I said, "Is it Bales or not?" And he nodded. Yeah, it was Bales. We were able to confirm it because we were there.
So you're describing what happens when you're in person. Being
When
out
we
in the
launch-
building now means you're of course not going to get those scoops. But isn't the Pentagon going to start leaking like a sieve?
Now, this whole concept of leaking is you get a piece here, you get a piece there, you pull them together, and sometimes they consider that a leak because it's unauthorized information.
But if they can't find Tony Capaccio in the halls, they're going to get it to you somehow.
Well, yeah, they will through phones, signal, meet outside the building, or Capitol Hill becomes important. Industry contacts become more important in terms of how to get the information. Online, they do post things that they might not think are useful, but you pull them together, they become important. Can I give a couple reasons why it's important for the press to be in the building that have been lost in the debate?
Yeah.
50% of the discretionary budget that Congress passes, exclusive of Medicare and Medicaid, is spent by the Pentagon. They're asking for like $1 trillion next year. $1 trillion, all-time high. The press needs to be there as a presence to let these people know there's an accountability fund for that kind of money. The other reason, 98% of the United States population has no connection with the military. Us being there is one representation of those 98% with no connection. The other 2% is a volunteer force. Their mothers and fathers look to press coverage, especially on personnel policies. In terms of, should my daughter or son go into the military? Very important to be there to explain those policies. Personnel policies resonate a lot more on Capitol Hill than maybe a cost overrun story. So you got to be aware of that. But those are the main reasons that the press should be there. And then there's one final thing, the influencer notice. Many officials who go in there, spend time at the Pentagon, their exposure to the media may be none or to regional or local. This way, they're exposed to the national media. The Pentagon press corps is generally seen as the best in terms of knowledge, not grandstanding,
That's right.
and eagerness to learn about obscure issues. They go back into the field and they say, "Hey, I dealt with the Pentagon press corps. The press isn't bad. We need to deal with them." This is to an institution that viscerally doesn't want to deal with us because we go outside the norm often.
Well, we have a lot of respect for what you do, what you did yesterday, and at least we get to see him around the bureau a little more often.
Yes, it's a joy to work with you, Tony. Thank you so much. And we're joined now by our panel, Rick Davis, a partner at Stone Court.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. This heirloom barley helps to detoxify your body, brings down inflammation, and soaks up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. This is a month supply. This is a very high-quality barley. It's micronutrient. Take it every day, and by bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals and detoxifying your body daily, you're helping your immune system, your endocrine system, your brain function, and even your cardiovascular system. Take this every day and get healthy. It's relatively inexpensive, and the benefits that you get from it when you take this every day is a magnitude more than not taking supplements. All right? By taking this every day, you're gonna notice that by detoxifying your body, that your body is healing. All right? Especially if you're, let's say, in your 30s or 40s or 50s or even 60s, 70s, because you've been over time accumulating toxins. A lot of people in the United States, because of their lifestyle, they have chronic inflammation. They're stressed out and they're building up lots of free radicals. But if you're soaking these up regularly, by taking this and doing it every day, you get these compound benefits. And your body starts to heal. Your immune system starts to get better. Your different organ systems start to function better. Your brain function starts to improve. If you have inflammation at the cerebral level, you're damaging your neurons. Well, if you damage your neurons to a point where they can't be rebuilt, that's permanent damage. The central nerve that's damaged is permanent damage, right? So if you bring down inflammation, especially at the cerebral level, you're helping with your brain function and you're adding to the probability of having longevity and vitality into your later years. So it's really important to do what I'm saying to do. So please go to my store, get the heirloom barley, and you're going to benefit from taking this when you're doing it regularly, a magnitude far more than a control group that's not. So please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Click the link, it's the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Just saying this shutout, or at least this attempt to censor and control that's happening. And I think that, we absolutely should see more in-depth coverage of the Pentagon, just out of sheer curiosity about what it might be that they're hiding and why is it that they're trying to control the message about what's going on there. So I do hope that reporters certainly see this as an opportunity to ask more questions, to be more inquisitive, to bring to the American public as much detail as possible, because there's clearly something that is nefarious that's happening that this administration thinks, the public shouldn't be as close to, and barring the press, is really a blockage of our constitutional rights to know what's going on. So I do hope that the reporters really seize this opportunity to dig deeper.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of people digging in here, I think, Aisha. It's good to have you back. Aisha Mills, Principal Community Asset Management, our Democratic strategist, alongside Republican strategist and Bloomberg Politics contributor Rick Davis. They'll be back with us for a much deeper dive in our second hour here on Balance of Power as we welcome our global television audience. Mario Parker will be back tomorrow. Thank you, sir, for a great conversation, as always, right here on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio, Satellite Radio, Channel 121, and on YouTube. Now you know what Mario looks like. Search Bloomberg Business News Live. We'll meet you in the studio with much more ahead here. We'll get an update on the government shutdown, day 16. Jack Fitzpatrick will be live on the Hill coming up next on Bloomberg.
Trade tensions between the U.S. and China are spiking once again after China imposed even tighter export controls on rare earth minerals. the Trump administration said that it will set price floors across a range of industries to combat market manipulation of China. After threatening 100% tariffs by November 1st, China is still playing hardball with Washington. Beijing betting that the U.S. economy cannot withstand the prolonged trade war, and it will tank the markets. I spoke with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on this program on Monday, and here's what he said about it.
This is China versus the rest of the world. They announced these export controls that are going to go into effect next month, and we have aggressively pushed back against them. President Trump said that the tariffs would not go into effect until November 1st. He will be meeting with Party Chair Xi in Korea. I believe that meeting will still be on. They have pointed a bazooka at the supply chains and the industrial base of the entire free world. And, we're not going to have it. China is a command and control economy. They are neither going to command nor control us. We are going to assert our sovereignty in various ways. Everything's on the table. I am optimistic that this can be de-escalated, but we're willing to do whatever it takes and to adopt whatever posture it takes.
Joining me now is the GETTR Institute.
Growing your business shouldn't mean growing your overhead. Growth should be seamless with AI-driven workflows built for the way you work. Progress shared by AI power.
Joining me now is the GETTR Institute Senior Fellow, Gordon Chang. Gordon, great to see you. As you can see, President Trump giving Xi Jinping one more chance to actually come to the table and negotiate with that meeting scheduled for October 31st in Seoul. If it doesn't go well, obviously the president is completely willing to put these 100% tariffs in place beginning November 1st. How do you see all of this playing out?
Yeah, well, people don't like 100% tariffs. They don't like price floors. They don't like the federal government taking equity stakes in Intel and other companies. But the point is, this is an emergency situation, Maria. And so we've got to take some extraordinary measures. China has this industrial policy, which it is using to target the United States. We need to defend ourselves. People say, oh, this is just a fight over primacy or dominance with China. No, this is actually a fight for survival. That's the way the Chinese regime frames us. So therefore we must react to that and act accordingly.
I totally agree. I mean, you've got capitalists out there saying, well, why did the U.S. take a 10% stake in Intel? Why did they take a stake in Mountain Pass, for the refining of rare earth minerals? Because we have to. Because at this point, if we don't act, the Chinese will continue to move forward and dominate these industries. We can't have 90% of our semiconductor chips used in the military made in Taiwan.
Yeah, I know, this is crazy. And we have sort of, after the Cold War, said, well, look, political barriers to trade should come down because geopolitics no longer matters. Well, geopolitics now matters. We see the Cold world dividing. And so at this point, we need to get our allies with us, our friends and partners, and we need industrial policy to get through a very, very difficult period.
Yeah, and I know that that's been President Trump's priority, ensuring the safety of America. The national security issues are paramount. There's an important meeting coming up in China that you just mentioned to me during the commercial break. Walk us through what's about to happen in China, because this is really key.
Yeah, the Central Committee of the Communist Party is going to hold what it calls its fourth plenum, and on the agenda is the next 5-year plan, measures to stimulate the economy. But people who think Xi Jinping is in trouble, including me, believe that this is the time where we're going to get some clarity on all of these rumors. Either Xi Jinping is going to come out of this as strong as ever, or he's going to be deposed. Now, the U.S. intelligence community obviously think he's okay because, you heard Treasury Secretary Bessent talk about, oh, well, we're going to meet with Xi Jinping at the end of the month. So they obviously think that he's going to stay around. But the point is, China's regime can't deal with us constructively until it gets its own internal house in order, and that means deciding the fate of Xi Jinping.
Well, we don't know. I mean, we don't know what the intelligence community really believes. They're not going to tell us because this is important information that they likely have to keep under wraps. But as you know, so long ago, I reported that Xi Jinping has lost power in China, that after he had the mini stroke a couple of years ago, they took away oversight of the military. we don't know what happens now in terms of, is he losing his power? That's what the Chinese people, I understand, are believing, that he's losing some power. So tell me when this plan is happening.
It starts on the 20th, and it's scheduled to end on the 23rd.
10 days before President Trump meets with Xi Jinping.
Right.
So going into the meeting that President Trump has with Xi Jinping, President Trump will know how strong or weak Xi Jinping is.
Yeah, and we saw President Trump's Truth Social posting talking about Xi Jinping's bad moment. And probably what he was referring to were the problems inside the Communist Party, where especially in the military, Xi Jinping probably has lost a lot of influence. We see certain things that do not happen if Xi Jinping were in control.
That's right. And he's also been losing some of his underlings. Right? I mean, if you're the leader with all this strong power, the Politburo is not going to start firing some people who answer to you.
Yeah, and that's the problem. In the military, for instance, he's lost his #1 loyalist and his #2 loyalist this year. So right now, all things are up in the air because the Communist Party's military is the most important faction in the government.
Yeah, so why do we have all these Chinese companies trading on U.S. exchanges that are tied to the Chinese military is the question that I keep asking. The president has serious economic levers to pull. He hasn't done it yet because I know that he probably doesn't want China to react so significantly negatively, but he's got that power, President Trump does.
Yes, and he'll use it when he believes that the time is right.
I agree. Now, Chinese authorities in the eastern Shandong province reportedly seized up to 60,000 maps that they say mislabeled Taiwan's governance, Gordon. Authorities also claim that the maps left out important islands in the South China Sea. Beijing maintains that Taiwan is part of Chinese territory, despite Taiwan having its own Democrat-elected government. So I'm wondering, and this is what I've been working on recently, Gordon. I want you to tell me if you think I'm onto something here. Admiral Davidson, okay? Admiral Davidson has come out with the Davidson window. And the Davidson window is, the thinking is that China goes into Taiwan by 2027 or up to 2029. Your thoughts on, is it 2027? I mean, what are we thinking in terms of when China goes in there? That's Admiral Davidson, and it's the Davidson window that the military knows all about.
Yeah, and there was General Mike Minahan, who is commander of U.S. Transportation Command, who a couple years ago said 2025 was the year. I mean, we don't know the timing, but we know the Chinese are getting ready to invade Taiwan. And also, we see some very belligerent activity in the South China Sea against the Philippines. Just 3 days ago, they rammed another Philippine boat. This is a series of incidents. And that's the flashpoint in the world right now. I think it's the South China Sea against the Philippines at places like Scarborough Shoal, Second Thomas Shoal, Sandy Cay.
Don't forget about Japan, a new prime minister coming in, a woman being called Margaret Thatcher #2. She will likely partner with President Trump against the aggressiveness of communist China, yes?
Yes, and by the way, those maps you just talked about, the Chinese complained about what they saw in the East China Sea as Japanese-controlled islands actually under Japan's administration. They believe that they're Chinese. These are called the Senkakus in Japan, the Diaoyus in Chinese. So, you know, all these Chinese maps just show a world very different than reality.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, this is just a fascinating chess game, which President Trump, I think, knows all about.
The United States better win the war, because if we don't win the war, we're going to have a lot more debt. We're going to lose prowess with the dollar, the petrodollar, and lose hegemonic power of the shipping lanes. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the turmeric. This will bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. Get the lignans. Lignans helps with the immune system, your endocrine system, brings down inflammation, and helps soak up free radicals. Ashwagandha root helps to bring down inflammation. It helps to control cortisol levels and control your blood glucose levels. When you stack these together, you're helping your cardiovascular health, because by bringing down inflammation, you're reducing plaque formation. It'll help with your immune system, because when you bring down inflammation, you're helping your immune system. And by bringing down inflammation, you're helping with your brain function. Super important stack to take every day to slow down the aging process. This is part of my anti-aging protocol. In addition, take this during the fall and the winter to boost up your immune system so you can weather the storm of what's coming. It's really important for you to take the stack. Get the turmeric, get the lignans, get the ashwagandha root, take it during the fall and the winter to boost up that immune system. use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, and you get $5 off any order. Click the link in the description of this video. That will take you to my website. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com.
And clearly, Democrats think that is a pressure point when you see the focus on Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva, who has still not been sworn in. The accusations that Johnson is doing this to hold up progress on the measure to require the release of Jeffrey Epstein documents. It may get more and more uncomfortable for him to maintain that position as time goes on, but he has not wavered. He has said there's no negotiating, no work to be done unless the shutdown ends, and I don't see any signs of him changing his mind at this point.
There you have it from Jack Fitzpatrick. Take it to the bank for now. I have a feeling we're going to be talking to Jack a little more before they have this settled. He's a Bloomberg government congressional reporter, has been knee-deep in this conversation for more than 16 days. It's 16 days of the shutdown now, but we've been talking about this going back weeks before it happened. When the votes take place, we'll, of course, let you know. The other major story that we're following today brings us to the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. Donald Trump on Truth Social, just before we came to air. This is now almost 2 hours ago. I am speaking to President Putin now, he wrote. We did give a headline a bit earlier that they were expected to speak today. The conversation, he says, is ongoing, a lengthy one, and I will report the contents, as will President Putin, at its conclusion. Thank you for your attention to this matter. This call could still be underway. It may have ended, and we haven't seen another post yet. We don't know, but of course there was a question about tomahawks, along with other defensive weaponry that came from President Zelensky. He's going to be meeting with President Trump tomorrow. This 48-hour period could be critical in determining the next phase of the war in Ukraine. And it's coming against the backdrop, of course, of calls for additional defense investments across the continent, which is why it's a pleasure to be able to spend some time with Nadia Calvino, the president of the European Investment Bank, which I want you to think of as the financial arm, if you will, of the European Union. President, it's great to have you with us on Bloomberg TV and radio. Thank you for being here. Welcome to Washington on this IMF week. I hope your meetings have been going well.
Yes, they're going really well, very interesting. It's always a pleasure to be back here in Bloomberg.
Well, I appreciate that very much here. According to our reporting, the European Union is laying out a 5-year plan that would consider investment across the continent to help rearm and restrain Russia. To what extent is the EIB involved in that broad investment that will clearly take years to realize?
Indeed, the European Investment Bank, as the financing arm of the European Union, has an important role to play in stepping up Europe's capabilities in the area of security and defense. There are many different needs, and we're very well placed to finance some key large infrastructures, critical infrastructures, military facilities, also research, production capacity, for example, drone manufacturing, and also financial support to small and medium-sized companies in the supply chain of large European contractors. It is unfortunate. I think that we are living this situation, but Europe has a very clear vision of where to go, and the European Investment Bank is helping get there.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're seeing a lot of these smaller defense companies, in some cases startups, that are reinventing the way that we look at this, and in some cases challenging the old line big defense contractors when it comes to different contracts. You mentioned drones, which is something that is a big deal here in the conversation about defense technology, that the EIB is ready to invest millions of euros in Europe's drone defenses. How would that be doled out, and how are you looking at that as a continent as opposed to a collection of countries?
But right now, we have a very robust pipeline of more than 30 flagship projects in the different areas I mentioned. But we're following very attentively the upcoming meeting of leaders, of prime ministers and presidents that will take place next week, the European Council meeting, to see what is their vision precisely when it comes to reinforcing the eastern border of the EU, also drone manufacturing and protection against enemy drones, etc. And we will be ready to help and support in those areas where we have most value added.
I can tell you that the president's phone call with Vladimir Putin has just ended.
Okay.
President, I just want to take a look at what he's writing here. He says, we've just concluded the telephone call, and it was a very productive one, says Donald Trump. President Putin congratulated me and the United States on the great accomplishment of peace in the Middle East, something that he said had been dreamed of for centuries. He goes on to try to connect the Middle East to the war in Ukraine here, even mentions the First Lady, says they spent a lot of time talking about trade between Russia and the U.S. when the war with Ukraine is over, and said that at the conclusion of the call, we agreed that there will be a meeting of our high-level advisors next week. The United States initial meetings will be led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, together with various other people to be designated, a meeting location to be determined. And then he says he and Putin will meet in an agreed-upon location, Budapest, Hungary, to see if we can bring this inglorious war to an end. He refers to the Zelensky meeting tomorrow, in which he will discuss his conversation with President Putin. So we have another meeting. Does this kind of talk sound productive to you, or more of the same?
Well, I think it's very good to call this an inglorious war. This is Putin's war, a war of aggression, a war of choice. From the European Union's perspective, we want this war to finish as soon as possible. So whatever, can get us to a fair and stable peace, of course, it has to be fair and stable if we want it to be permanent, should be welcomed, of course.
When we consider the need for energy and the war over Russian oil, which I think is its own story altogether, would the EIB help cover Ukrainian purchases of U.S. LNG if that helped to end the war sooner?
We have just signed a 300 million deal with Ukraine. I had a meeting with the Prime Minister Syrvidenko yesterday, and we're looking into options to step it up even so that they can replenish their gas reserves for the winter. We are also supporting Ukraine when it comes to rebuilding critical infrastructures, including transport and energy. And we are supporting Ukraine when it comes to rebuilding supporting the daily lives of Ukrainians so that they can live lives that are as normal as possible, in this totally extraordinary and terrible circumstance, rebuilding hospitals, schools, kindergartens, protecting the infrastructure so that children can go to school. I think this is essential if we want to protect a strong basis for the recovery once the war is over.
There's so much that we can talk about that is depressing. The idea of rebuilding is the definition of optimism. I'd love to hear how far you allow yourself to not only think about it, but to plan for it, because obviously this is a war that could end soon, and an enormous amount of work will be done and money required from governments and private industry. How far have you planned this out?
I am very grateful for your question, and I'm going to also smile, when I say I actually think I am very confident that Ukraine will bounce back very strongly once the war is over, because I have seen the determination, the resilience, the commitment of Ukrainians. I have also seen the very strong infrastructures of the country, and we have been supporting them for more than 2 years to make sure that the country has a strong basis on which to build this reconstruction, and also to pave the way for a successful accession to the European Union. So I am confident, we just need Putin to stop the war, and then we can move on to a new phase which can be more constructive.
Is rebuilding Ukraine years or decades?
I tend to think it's years. Actually, because we're talking about a country that continues to live a quite normal life, in these circumstances. The government has managed to keep a financial management which responds to a normal budget, to a normal administration, despite, of course, the immense needs that are related to the war. And so I think that the sooner we can move to the next phase, the better.
That is obviously a best case scenario, I guess, at this point. When it comes to European commitments like the one that we mentioned for buying U.S. LNG, do you want to see a matching commitment from the United States? Or do you think the administration has done what it can, at least financially speaking?
Well, right now, I think we all have to focus in supporting Ukraine, and obviously military support is of the essence. European countries are clearly stepping up their support, not only to protect ourselves, to protect the European Union, but also to support Ukraine. Countries are taking quite novel, quite innovative measures to provide this support. And I think this is the essential thing so that we can see an end to the war. And then we will have to see how everybody contributes to supporting the recovery of the country.
Fascinating to spend some time with you, President Calvino. Thank you so much for being with us today in Washington, here on Bloomberg. I hope the rest of your IMF week is productive.
Thank you.
Stay in touch with us and come see us again, because this is a story that's very important to us and one that's not likely going away anytime soon. President Trump's call with Vladimir Putin has just ended. We'll have much more on this ahead, remembering that at this time tomorrow, we'll be talking about his meeting in the Oval Office with President Zelensky. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. We'll assemble our political panel next, right here on Balance of Power on Bloomberg.
There are sort of two huge issues with AI at the moment. Hi, I'm Tom Goodwin. I'm with teamwork.com looking at their new reports on AI and technology. One is there's apps.
You've hit on the nub of the issue. The Americans have been trying for years to pivot and focus on the Indo-Pacific. And allow me to pivot very briefly, I hope, to Russia and Ukraine. Once the Russians prove they can't even reach Kyiv, never mind reaching the Atlantic to then glare malevolently at the United States, at that point, the MAGA Americans who are preparing to come into power say, both to themselves, the American electorate, and then to the Europeans, guys, the game's up.
You got this one.
Yeah. You've got to sort yourselves out. You've got to defend. We will stick with you if you do defend yourselves, but we are focusing here.
Now, I promised we'd be joined by all the cleverest people here at Channel Literature Festival, and I wasn't lying, so here's another one for you. It's the broadcaster, author, and foreign policy expert Tim Marshall. He's here at the festival discussing the 10th anniversary edition of his book, Prisoners of Geography. Hello, Tim.
Hello, Hugo. Unfortunately, that version of Tim couldn't be here.
Well,
here I am.
You know what? I'll take the one I've got. Let's start off by talking about China. In Prisoners of Geography, you looked at China's rising influence and its battle for supremacy with the United States. That was in 2015. A lot's happened in the last 10 years in that regard.
It has. You get some things right, you get some things wrong. But what I was feeling towards 10 years ago was that we would go back to a form of bipolar world and a form of Cold War. And I think we're certainly in the Cold War, and I think we are still heading towards a bipolar world. I mean, you have to understand the nuances are different to the previous iteration, but as long as you understand that, I think it's a useful template that instead of the Soviets and the Americans, it's now the Chinese and the Americans and who falls in behind them. And we are seeing pressure over and over again on countries to fall in on one block or the other.
So, I mean, in the UK, I mean, I guess on the China side of that equation, we're tangling with the twin needs to protect ourselves from China, while also needing to trade with China, which is a far more complicated situation than it was with the Soviet Union, for example, where we could just hold them away.
We didn't want their Kalashnikovs, we didn't want their tractors, and they didn't build very much else.
Yeah.
Not quite the same thing with China, and that does put us in an invidious position, especially when push comes to shove and we are really leaned on, notably by the Americans. But there's a balance to be had, and I don't think we're doing it very well. I don't think we are quite tough enough when it comes to national security, and the Americans are very exasperated with us about that. But, you know, push comes to shove, and they will both push and shove. We will fall in mostly into the American bloc.
Do you think there is something about, I'm fascinated by what the American view is of our relationship with China and how we're adapted to China. So the extent to which America's been kind of sort of, has looked a bit like it's been trying to push all its traditional allies away of late, which obviously, if we're talking about a bipolar world, means that they're going to be attracted somewhere else instead. Do you think the White House has a slightly different view about that than they perhaps had 6 months ago?
Well, only a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
You've hit on the nub of the issue. The Americans have been trying for years to pivot and focus on the Indo-Pacific. And allow me to pivot very briefly, I hope, to Russia and Ukraine. Once the Russians prove they can't even reach Kyiv, never mind reaching the Atlantic to then glare malevolently at the United States, at that point, the MAGA Americans who are preparing to come into power say, both to themselves, the American electorate, and then to the Europeans, guys, the game's up.
You got this one.
Yeah. You've got to sort yourselves out. You've got to defend. We will stick with you if you do defend yourselves, but we are focusing here.
I mean, that's not quite how they put it, but
that's what underpins
it. Sure. Yeah.
And I agree with you that in the past 6 months, perhaps some of the more nuanced things have been got into Mr. Trump's mind. That it is good to have friends, but what they have bet, what they have gambled, I suspect, is that they know, push comes to shove, which way we will line up, and we will line up behind them. And you saw what happened in, I've called it Smarm el Sheikh, but in Sharm el Sheikh this week, I mean, the smarminess was off the scale. You saw naked American power and everybody lining up behind it because they're frightened of annoying them. So that's what they bet. They have something called strategic restraint, where we all pretend that they're the first amongst equals when really they're just first amongst equals. But they have dropped because the MAGA Americans are robust.
Yeah.
So they've dropped that pretense and they've said, we're in charge, make your choices, and if you make the wrong ones, you're on your own.
Yeah, sure. Look, your book, which became a huge bestseller, is about how geography determines history. You say, for example, that China will never end up at war with India because of the Himalayas in the way. What can that theory tell us about China and Europe?
That's less geographic, except that the fact they've built out their economic empire worldwide. What the Himalayas prevent major mechanized warfare between India and China. Of course, there
are other types of war available. Yes. Yeah.
Well, yes. Yeah. What they do in Europe is both invest in ports. They own, huge amount of real estate in European ports. They invest in our companies, not least, according to the Times story today, which I tend to believe that in our national security infrastructure companies.
Yeah.
They invest in our nuclear industry. They're trying to build an embassy where some of our most sensitive cabling will run right underneath it. And we are still asleep at the wheel because their relationship with Europe is that we can get right inside these guys because they're wide open. We can't get inside America because they have for years been arguing, accepting there is this threat, and we are still asleep in the wheel.
Yeah, I mean, we very much resisted the idea of there being a threat. So I guess, look, to link both these points we've been discussing together, how worried is America about us? us about our closeness to China, about our vulnerability to China? Does the stories we've seen this week, does that sort of confirm a kind of viewpoint among the Americans?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying they're right, but they are certainly exasperated. And this story will further exacerbate their frustration with us. I mean, for example, our universities, the Chinese are so deep inside our universities because they're clever enough to realize about the long march through the institutions. I'm sure you know your Gramsci, and I'm sure they do, as they're nominally communists. But they have understood that the long march through the institutions includes the universities, and they are so deep inside our universities. They're deep inside everywhere, and the political class in this country, of many hues, some of them understand it, but for political reasons, kind of just put it to one side. The national security class warn them over and over again, and are not properly listened to because of trade. I mean, it is a very, very hard choices that have to be made.
Yeah, indeed, and it just all seems so particularly sharp this week. Look, thank you very much indeed. Thanks again to Tim Marshall. Tim's been here at the festival discussing the 10th anniversary of his book, Prisoners of Geography. Great speech to Tim.
The Ukraine that could reach Moscow. You know, he spent very little time, really sort of re-litigating with Putin the idea of, a peace deal right away. And now we have completely a reversal of that, seemingly. I mean, I don't want to speak too hastily that somehow tomorrow's meeting with Zelensky isn't going to be a good one. Zelensky wants a deal too, right? Zelensky wants peace. And that whether you like it or not, that's going to run through Donald Trump. And so Zelensky's got his own capabilities to influence the president, and certainly is on the right side. So let's see what happens. But you keep your fingers crossed, because the only thing worse than a government shutdown is Zelensky in the Oval Office.
Oh, wow. Does this mean no tomahawks, Rick, or we need to wait for tomorrow?
I think you got to wait. Look, Donald Trump's an unpredictable character. He makes the point that you really don't know what you're going to get, when you open up that box. And I refrain from saying he's a box of chocolate. And yet at the same time, the wheels have been in motion at the Defense Department to queue up tomahawks. And so the idea that this could be something that could get done was, I think, pretty acceptable to the defense establishment. So we'll see. I'm not ruling it out, and I'm not ruling out other support that we could give to the Europeans in order to help support the war at this stage.
Aisha Sisi asked the question, does this come down to whomever speaks to Trump last, who wins the war?
I mean, is this middle school? Like, this is, I don't know, guys. I just think that all of this is just completely frightening and preposterous. That this is how we're literally talking about, we're not talking about peace or the Ukrainian people or the stability of Europe, which are really the conversations we should be having. We're talking about whether our president likes a guy. It's completely, nerve-wracking to me. So I do hope that, this goes well. But frankly, I'm not confident that it will.
We're talking about, of course, the war in Ukraine, but there are a lot of questions about the president's foreign policy this week, with revelations yesterday now confirmed. It was first a report, Rick, in the Wall Street Journal, acknowledged by the White House, that President Trump has approved a covert CIA operation inside Venezuela. They are apparently not armed and engaged, but they are obviously busy there and potentially setting the stage for an operation that could be larger. We've now blown up a half dozen boats coming out of Venezuela, said to be carrying drugs. Maduro government is outraged by this whole thing. But what do we think the CIA is up to there, if not actually mapping targets for what could be an attack by the United States?
Look, I mean, I think it's, wrong to speculate on what potential CIA operators are doing in a hostile country. The reality is there's a lively opposition there that needs help being organized and supported. So it could be something as benign as domestic politics. And yet, on the other hand, this president seems to be on a war footing with Venezuela. Not only has he attacked these drug runners coming out of Venezuela, but They've also moved a lot of big military assets, submarines and frigates and destroyers into the Caribbean to be staged near Venezuela. And so, this is a president that means business. I don't think we should discount the fact that he's prepared to pull the trigger on any kind of kinetic effort to engage the Venezuelans. I guess the question that I would raise is, what's the outcome? I mean, what has been asked of the Venezuelans and the Maduro administration in order to solve this problem? It is now a shooting war, and the question is, over what?
It's a great question, Aisha. The president said yesterday,
it's over. It's Venezuela it's over the drug running that's going on. In addition, it's showing the military prowess to the Chinese, and maybe even flexing some muscle with Putin.
That my concern is that this president is making really broad blanket statements with absolutely zero evidence. It's alleged that these boats that he's shooting up are presumably, bringing drugs or whatever it is, but do we have real evidence and proof of that? Congress doesn't know what's going on. The president has not issued us anything that really will help the American public understand definitively why Venezuela is suddenly the biggest threat to the United States that warrants this type of action. And that's my concern, is the complete and total lack of transparency. Frankly, just, take his word for it, because he, bellowed out something. And we know that much of what he has to say is misinformation, disinformation, half-truths, and a lot of poking out his chest and making declarations.
Trump orange man bad syndrome again on Bloomberg.
That they carry this out. Why?
So, a lot of questions with our panel.
And both of those individuals, Aisha and Rick, they manage portfolios. Would you want a dumbass like that to manage your portfolio? Of course not. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. C60, you can get it in MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, or avocado oil. Now, C60 is a carbon molecule, 60 carbons in a molecule. It's 1,000 times more potent than vitamin C, and it's going to soak up free radicals. By soaking up free radicals, you're reducing stress in the cell. And by reducing stress in the cell, you're going to help your mitochondria, and your mitochondria will produce more ATP. Your cells will perform better. You'll have more energy. Your immune system will improve. Your vascular system will improve because you're soaking up free radicals at the vascular level, reducing plaque formation. It'll help with your brain function because it'll help with the health of the neuron. So it's a great way to get healthy. Take a teaspoon a day every day. I've been taking this since 2016 every day. It's a great way to slow down the aging process. And if you stack it with NAD+, resveratrol, ubiquinol, clarity factor, that's a great way to soak up those free radicals and really slow down the aging process. Take a teaspoon a day every day, preferably on an empty stomach in the morning. If you work out, take it before your workout so you can soak up the free radicals and you'll recover quicker. You should be taking this every day, and you will notice that your immune system is improving, your cardiovascular system is improving, your brain function is improving, and your glands will perform better. So please go to my store and get the C60. It's really important. C60 will also help the basal layer of your skin, and you'll notice that your skin health is improved. So it's a great way to get healthy and to slow down the aging process. Take a teaspoon a day every day. And especially during the fall and the winter, because during the fall and the winter, if you contract something, you're going to be producing lots of free radicals, lots of stress. You want to bring down that stress, and you want to bring down those free radicals, and you can do that by taking the C60 and boost up that immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening. Please go to my store, follow my advice, get the great supplements I offer, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order, and get healthy. If you pay attention and stack these supplements the way I just told you, you will get great benefits and you'll start to notice a slowing down of the aging process. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.